The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain.
Super beets. Super beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. With few exceptions, but this is page 176. With few exceptions, most Native American cultures did not have our notions as part of their collective mythos. Instead of the story that we're separate from creation and born to dominate it, these older cultures held a different view of the place of humans in the order of creation. They believe we are part of the world. We are made of the same flesh as other animals. We eat the same plants. We share the same air, water, soil, and food with every other life form on the planet. We are born into life by the same means as other mammals, and when we die, like them, we become part of the soil. Very few, probably not more than a dozen tribes, which arose out of the tens of thousands of tribes that populated the planet. And this small number of tribes proceeded to wipe out and displace and destroy the thousands of other tribes who were living in a sustainable, peaceful, and connected to nature way. They left the garden and began to create dominating city-states and then empires. They were the first people infected with Wetiko, the origin of our younger culture. And because of this, they had become more efficient at increasing their own numbers. They had more sunlight under their own personal control. Of course, there was a price to pay for this. While the San, Kogi, Ik, and other native peoples may spend less than 2 to 4 hours a day gathering food and attending to the needs of life, and due to this day, by the way, in younger culture societies, this balance was radically shifted as average people must work longer and harder just to survive. Those who were the dominating individuals in the culture, however, could live luxuriously and work less and less. So for every person who only worked an hour or two a day, another person would have to work 4 or 8 or 10 hours a day or more. Without massive exploitation of resources or theft from others, for every person with 10 times as much wealth, 10 people must have only 1/10 as much. Social and economic classes were born, and the first governments came into being to define, order, and control the socio-economic structure and help the wealthy maintain and increase their riches. Whether they knew it or not, these governments, mostly kingdoms in the early days, transmitted younger culture values to all citizens, rich and poor. The power brokers of this time programmed the consciousness of their subjects, just as our governments, educational institutions, and mass media do today. Nobody knows what brought about the first eruption of Wetiko cultural insanity, but logic suggests it was most likely happened in places where food resources were only cyclically abundant. For example, the Tlingit and Weda Native American tribes of the Pacific Northwest and the area around Vancouver Island were apparently extensive traders and owners of slaves. And this was because they could store food. This is where it all began, beginning wealth. Anyhow, the book is The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is just a small dip into it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, well, first of all, it's Anything Goes Friday. Anything you want to talk about. There are a couple things that I wanted to rant about that I will share with you here. The first is there's a group of people who are, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but we're seeing all these alt versions of federal agencies appearing on Twitter. And in some cases, they're staffed by former officials of the department. Some cases, it's current officials of the department. As the Trump, national security apparatus gets more and more efficient, probably actual employees are going to be starting to back off. A number of people from the State Department, for example, yesterday were laid off. And this I saw this morning on Twitter. This came from the Alt Department of State. And again, this just might be some guy in his bedroom, to paraphrase Donald Trump, but it may also be from people in the State Department or who were in the State Department. And the way it reads like something written by somebody who does political analysis for a living. Whether it's, in the State Department, of course, that's a big thing. You do political analysis of countries all over the world. What's going on with these politicians? What's going on with this party? What's Erdogan up to? What's Putin up to? What's Theresa May up to? What's Donald Trump up to, for that matter? And that it appears to be the subject of this. And I'm going to share this memo with you and then point out to you what actually happened yesterday, within minutes of the end of Donald Trump's press conference, that in my mind, and, maybe I'm running off some kind of, fever dream conspiracy theory here, but in my mind, it indicates that the entire thing was exactly what they wanted it to be. I think arguably right down to the Jewish reporter standing up and saying, no one in my community thinks you're anti-Semitic, but what are you going to do about the rise in anti-Semitism? We've got, over 40 bomb threats of synagogues just since you've been elected. And Trump responds by saying, I'm the least anti-Semitic person you ever met. My daughter and her husband are Jewish. My grandchildren are Jewish. I'm the least racist person you ever met. And just 10 minutes later, of course, he says to a black reporter, do you know the Congressional Black Caucus? Can you set up a meeting? Like, all black people know all black people, right? I mean, it's just bizarre. But even that, I would submit to you, is intentional. He refused to condemn anti-Semitism. He merely claimed that he was not an anti-Semite. A variation on the Holocaust Remembrance Day tweet of saying, of refusing to mention Jews on the Holocaust Day. But I digress. This is much bigger than just that. But what I'm saying is, I think that even at the micro level, even at the level of pretty much every answer yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what Steve Bannon wanted him to do. And make no mistake, I agree with the analysis of this Alt Department of State that this is Bannon pulling the strings. Not that, Trump isn't, in my opinion, fully conscious of what he's doing. The guy is not an idiot. You can make fun of him all day long. His syntax is garbled. His vocabulary is that of a seventh grader. I get all that. That probably has more to do with something like dyslexia or what. He doesn't like to read. Well, he doesn't wear glasses and he's 70 years old. That almost certainly means he's had LASIK surgery. And as you age, your eyes continue to change even after the surgery. So it may well be that it's just really hard for him to read. I mean, they've got this thing where now the national security briefers are told to keep his daily presidential briefings to 3 topics. Doesn't matter if there's 5 emergencies in the world, has to be 3 topics, and none of them can be more than 1 page. Oh, and by the way, he likes maps. I'm not making this up, right? This is in the news. But back to my original point of the entire news conference in its entirety. Here is the analysis from Alt Department of State. Yeah, the Twitter feed is Alt State Department, ALTSTATEDPT, if you want to follow it. I retweeted it this morning. You can look on my Twitter line, Thom_Hartmann. The headline, of course, today's news conference and coverage is not chaos, it's careful strategy. And then they write, today's Trump news conference was not chaos. It was the administration's first move to energize their base by creating a nationwide whip organization. Now, some of you may, a lot of people don't know what whip means in the context of politics. Steny Hoyer, for example, is the Democratic whip. He's the number 2. Yeah, I believe that Kevin McCarthy is the Republican whip. The whip is basically the number 2 person who goes around and talks to members of the party and whips them into line to get a vote. They're the vote counters. They're the ones who if we're 1 vote short, they're the ones who go and say, if you really want that dam built in your district, you better vote on this thing. Right? So in other words, they're the persuaders. They're the enforcers. There's a mafia term for it, but in any case, okay. So it was a So back to this. Today's Trump news conference was not chaos. It was the administration's first move to energize their base and create a nationwide whip organization. It is considered political calculus, likely authored by Steve Bannon. Be prepared to counter the strategy. Bannon and other strategists know that the resistance movement is having a more substantial impact than initially expected. The impact is evident on Republican senators on the Judiciary Committee joining Democrats who are calling for an investigation of the administration's ties to Russia. To combat this negative momentum, Bannon and others sent Trump out with an attack strategy designed to appeal directly to his core supporters. Now, remember that phrase. This is the key to the whole thing, and I'll get to that in just a minute. This will likely be effective in energizing his base. The goal of this strategy is not to move the polls, but rather to mobilize a swell of small yet fervent support aimed at putting pressure on the Republican Congress, who might consider abandoning Trump if the political climate in their constituencies demands any abandonment. The Bannon-directed administration is likely strategizing to mobilize their base as a nationwide whip organization to counter the effectiveness of the resistance. Expect more of these base-directed strategies, beginning with Saturday's inexplicable campaign rally in Florida. The resistance must be louder. We cannot simply expect his erratic behavior to damage his effect. Most importantly, we must see these strategies for what they are and continue to pressure lawmakers to do their job in putting country over blind party loyalty. Now, that very much sounds to me like something out of the State Department. So what gives me, in my mind, what gives proof to this is those of you who've been listening for, more than a year or two, you know that way back a year and a half ago when I started predicting that Donald Trump was probably going to win the Republican primary, and because he was running as a Democrat, he was saying, I'm going to protect your Social Security, your Medicare and Medicaid. Republicans want to tear it apart. I won't let them. We're going to blow up the free trade deals, which have always been championed by Republicans and fought against by Democrats. With the exception of Bill Clinton, and I get that. Don't call me up and tell me that, but it was even the Democrats when Clinton was president, with a majority of Democrats in both the House and Senate were opposed to NAFTA and all the other trade deals. So anyhow, the minutes after Donald Trump's press conference yesterday, I got an email. Oh, well, what I started to tell you is way back when it looked like Trump was winning, I sent $5 to his campaign. Now, I've been doing this, most of my life. It used to be actually fun. I would see a politician I didn't like, and I'd send them $1, and then they would send me like $30 worth of junk in the mail. That was back when everything was direct mail, and it was actually expensive to mail things out. And I was like, sabotage. Well, now it's email, so it doesn't cost him anything, but I just wanted to keep up to date. So I sent $5 to the Trump campaign, so I'm on their list as a supporter. You can do it too if you want to find out what's going on the inside. And this is why it's so amazing. Minutes after Trump got off his press conference, I get an email from Donald Trump. Thomas, you know that I don't trust the media to report on anything we achieve. Instead, you, the American people, are our last line of defense against the media's hit jobs. You are our greatest asset in helping our movement, channeling Bernie here, deliver the truth to the American people. And this letter, it goes on, over the next 4 years, our movement will be subjected to some of the nastiest attacks you can imagine. Remember that memo from the State Department, from the alt State Department saying, there's going to be more? They're setting up their base. But just like during the campaign, we need to stay focused on getting the job done and accomplishing our shared goal to make America great. That's why I made it a point to cut through the media's noise and go straight to the American people. It worked during the campaign, and it'll work again over these next 4 years. But I can't do it alone. I need you by my side, supporting our message and doing your part to get the truth to the American voter. Minutes after the press conference, I get this. This was organized. This was planned. This wasn't some weird ad hoc. Donald Trump wakes up at 8 in the morning and says, hey, let's have a press conference. No. And attached to it is a survey, the Mainstream Media Accountability Survey. From the Trump-Pence campaign, the campaign committee. See, he has declared he's running for 2020. By the way, now that he's running for president in 2020, we should really let the next president decide who's going to be on the Supreme Court, right? But I digress. So the Mainstream Media Accountability Survey, this is long, detailed. It's 10 pages long. Lots of thought went into this. This took more than an hour to prepare, and it came out minutes after the press conference. Here are the questions that Trump asked of his supporters. This is basically what's called a push poll. Number one, do you believe that the mainstream media has reported unfairly on our movement? 2, do you trust MSNBC to report fairly on Trump's presidency? 3, do you trust CNN? Number 4, do you trust Fox News? Number 5, on which issues does the mainstream media do the worst job of representing Republicans? Immigration, economics, pro-life values, religion, individual liberty, conservatism, foreign policy, Second Amendment rights. Which television source do you primarily get your news from? Do you use a source not listed above? Which online source do you use the most? Do you trust the mainstream media to tell the truth about Republicans' parties, policies, and actions? Do you believe that the mainstream media does not do their due diligence, fact-checking before publishing stories about Trump? Do you believe that the media unfairly reported on President Trump's executive order temporarily restricting people entering our country from nations compromised by radical Islamic terrorism? Were you aware that a poll was released revealing that a majority of Americans actually supported President Trump's temporary restriction executive order? This is the push poll part of it. Do you believe that political correctness has created biased news coverage on both illegal immigration and radical Islamic terrorism? Do you believe that, contrary to what the media says, raising taxes does not create jobs? Do you believe that the people of faith have been unfairly characterized by the media? Do you believe that the media wrongly attributes gun violence to Second Amendment rights? Do you believe that the media has been far too quick to spread false stories about our movement? Do you believe that the media uses slurs rather than facts to attack conservative stances on issues like border control, religious liberties, and Obamacare? Do you believe that the media purposely tries to divide Republicans against each other in order to help elect Democrats? Do you believe that the media creates false feuds within our party in order to make us seem divided? Do you believe that the mainstream media has been far too eager to jump to conclusions about rumored stories? Do you believe that if Republicans were obstructing Obama like Democrats are doing to President Trump, the mainstream media would attack Republicans? Do you believe that the president's, which is really ironic, do you believe that the president's decision to break with tradition by giving lesser-known reporters and bloggers a chance to ask, do you believe with the president's decision, I think they meant, do you agree, to ask the White House press secretary questions? Do you agree with President Trump's media strategy to cut through the media's noise and deliver our message straight to the people? Do you believe that our party should spend more time and resources holding the mainstream media accountable? This is a strategy. This is not an administration in chaos. I mean, there may be chaos going on in the administration, but I watched CNN and MSNBC yesterday after this thing, and yesterday afternoon and a little bit in the evening, and you get all these commentators sitting around grinning and smiling and yucking about, what kind of chaos and how stupid it was, and Donald Trump looked unhinged, Jake Tapper's word and all that. Be very careful. They used to make fun of Hitler. Oh, he's that little Charlie Chaplin guy with the funny mustache. Nobody takes him seriously. 1 million people showed up in Berlin in 1932 to protest Hitler. Everybody knew he was going to go down. He's just a crazy guy. Meanwhile, hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Meanwhile, it's just been leaked that the Trump administration is formulating plans to mobilize 100,000 National Guard troops to deport the illegal aliens. And welcome back. Wow, what a day. Deborah in St. Paul, Minnesota, watching on YouTube. Hey, Deborah, what's up?
Hi, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Thank you.
Love your show. I have called Amy Klobuchar, Al Franken, and Betty McCollum. I had an idea regarding fake news. If there's any other Congress people out there and would like to create a bill, my thought is, why not have a bill where if you're called a news source, you have to have factual news. But if it's an opinion piece or non-factual, it can't be called the news.
Right.
And it could be monitored as, how when you swear on the radio or TV shows, they...
By the FCC.
Yeah. And they could find the people that do not...
We had this prior to 1987. It was called the Fairness Doctrine. And it required that broadcast outlets, in order to maintain their broadcast licenses, this is radio and TV stations, had to, quote, program in the public interest, end quote, which was broadly understood and enforced by the FCC to mean that you have to have news. You have to actually tell people what's going on, even if it's not the stuff that's going to, you know, titillate them or excite them or get more eyeballs. Even if it's boring stuff like, hey, the administration yesterday signed into law a bill that lets the coal companies dump more waste into your streams, you know, which, you know, pretty much nobody was talking about, right? And in fact, they played Trump's, his signing ceremony where he said, this is going to create more jobs. Well, no, it's not going to create more jobs. Actually, keeping the waste out of the streams creates jobs because people have to process it and clean it up. But yeah, we used to have that, and it went away in 1987. I remember driving down the Autobahn in Germany in the summer of 1987, listening to American Forces Radio on the radio, and hearing them report that CBS News had just moved their news division under the purview of the Vice President for Entertainment. And I remember thinking, because that was 87, and I had been in the news from basically 1968, well, really 71 was when I stopped being a DJ and started doing news, until 1978. I did news for 7 years. And I understood how, news was treated as a sacred trust, basically, by all the media because of the Fairness Doctrine. And Reagan stopped enforcing the Fairness Doctrine in 87, and President Obama took it off the books 2 years ago. So it's not even on the books anymore. But it hadn't been.
Why would Obama do that?
You'll have to ask him. But I remember thinking as I was driving down the street, okay, here we're going to stop having news and we're going to start having infotainment. And I was absolutely right. And I've been talking about that on this program for 14 years. I wrote about it. It's a chapter in one of my books back almost 20 years ago. This is the problem that we have right now, is that we don't actually have news in the United States. Even NPR is now corporate funded and has no real obligation to actually tell the news, which is why they get people from Heritage Foundation, American Enterprise, all these right-wing think tanks on, while they're taking money from, right-wing funders. So, it's like, where is the news? It's pretty much gone. We live in an era of infotainment. We have slipped into George Orwell's 1984, or more properly, perhaps, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Deborah, that's my solution, is to bring back the Fairness Doctrine. Deborah, thank you so much for the call, and thanks for watching us on YouTube. We'll be right back.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity, resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them.
In standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here
on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here
on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you
24 hours a day,
every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us
raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
So here we have, this, playing into the whole fake news and we don't have news anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, Donald Trump did exactly what he was sent out to do yesterday in his press conference, in my opinion. Exactly what Bannon wanted him to do. And number two, the Associated Press is reporting this morning that there is a draft memo in the White House proposing to send 100,000 National Guard troops as a deportation force. President Trump is considering mobilizing as many as 100,000 National Guard troops to, quote, round up unauthorized immigrants, including those beyond the southern U.S. border, in other words, from coast to coast. The AP reports The states included California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Remember Pastor Niemöller? First they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I was not concerned. Then they came for the communists. I was not a communist, so I was not concerned. And they came for the Jews, and I was not Jewish, so I was not concerned. And then they came for me. Now, I realize I'm probably badly paraphrasing that from memory, but are we there yet? Back with your calls, I guess.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I guess the bottom line net of everything that I just said is the press and you are being played by Steve Bannon. We'll be back with you. There is a new television ad buy going on. Daniel Marins, M-A-R-N-S, is reporting about this over at the Huffington Post. He writes, television viewers across the country have been treated to some scary advertisements about the future of Social Security. A narrator in tones with ominous music playing in the background. Our next president needs to take action on Social Security or future generations could lose up to $10,000 a year. So why all this Social Security hysteria? You know, there's these groups like Pete Peterson, who's a Wall Street billionaire, and his foundation and his political action groups, and there's others as well. There's a bunch of Wall Street billionaires who really want Social Security to be privatized. Now, I can't speak to Pete Peterson's specific motivation, but the broadly accepted theory of why these guys care is, number one, that Social Security is like, you know, it's $1 trillion a year or thereabouts. It's an enormous amount of money. And if that money, I mean, it's flowing through the federal government and it's not sticking to anybody's fingers. Whereas if that money flowed through Wall Street, can you imagine how much money Jamie Dimon could make off that? Can you imagine how much money each of the big banksters could make off that? These guys would end up like Stephen J. Hemsley, you know, the CEO of United Healthcare, a billionaire. Because Congress drilled holes in Medicare, you know, I've been noticing on TV, United Healthcare runs these ads, you know, for their Medicare supplement programs or their Medicare Advantage, which takes you off the Medicare roll and puts you in, you know, largely at the tender mercies of United Healthcare. And they say, you know, we've been doing this for 30 years. Medicare's been out there for 50 years. So what happened? Well, some Republicans drilled some holes in Medicare, which provided a multi-billion-dollar industry and a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to health insurance companies and to AARP, which basically is a health insurance sales organization, a Medicare insurance sales organization. This is where AARP makes a lot of their money. And you walk by their headquarters here in Washington, D.C., and it's like a palace. And they sell lots and lots and lots of Medicare supplement insurance to people over 65 who qualify for it. And most of it is underwritten by United Healthcare. It's a really, really profitable scam or program or whatever you want to call it. So if they can get Republicans to do the same thing with Social Security, let's drill some holes in Social Security. Well, Social Security doesn't pay quite this, but you can buy insurance for Social Security. So if you start when you're 20 years old and start sending $10, you know, it would be like basically do-it-yourself annuities, right? Because Social Security is like an annuity. You pay into it throughout your life, and then you get the money back after you stop working. And an annuity is a guarantee, or a pension. You know, the pensions are kind of the same thing, only they're paid for by your employers. And you contribute money to your pension as well, depending on how it's set up. But instead of going through the insurance companies, because it's not health insurance, it would go through the banks.
Well, actually, it would go through. It could go through insurance companies too. It just wouldn't be United Healthcare and Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Instead, it would be, you know, farmers or whatever. I don't know, frankly, who provides annuities. But there would be a huge opportunity if they could drill some holes into Social Security, if they could cut Social Security. A huge opportunity, a brand new market opening up for AARP to sell you a supplemental program for your Social Security. The ad, writes Daniel Marins, the headline is Nation's Largest Senior Group is Using Conservative Scare Tactics on Social Security. And then the subhead, AARP is promoting alarmism about the program and giving awards to Republican lawmakers who want to cut it. And Daniel Marins notes in his article for the Huffington Post, the headline of which I just read you, the new television ad has only heightened liberal concerns. Critics of AARP's approach say the influential seniors group, which has 37 million members across the country and incredible influence in Washington, D.C., is making Social Security's financial challenges seem much more dire than they really are. In doing so, the group is playing right into the crisis framing favored by conservatives who want benefit cuts to seem inevitable. Oh, you young folks, you're never going to see Social Security. You should just go along with us and cut it. And then you'll never see it. What a nice self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Not that AARP is saying that, but it seems like actually in a way that they're saying that. Don't buy the hype. Right now, if you make over $118,500 a year, you no longer pay any Social Security taxes, which is crazy.
Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Okay, somebody tweeted to me, no, the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated in 1987. I refer you, actually, I should just tweet this back out. I'll do this. This is from the Hollywood Reporter of all places, but you can find it in multiple other sources. The controversial Fairness Doctrine and 80, this is dated August 22nd, 2011. The controversial Fairness Doctrine and 82 other rules governing electronic media were deemed obsolete and therefore will be abandoned, the FCC said Monday. FCC Chairman Julius Janikowski called the rules outdated and said they were being removed to lessen the burdens of regulation on media companies. The decision also includes an 89% reduction in satellite license fees and a 30% reduction in broadcast fees. So where is this? Here it goes. I'll just add that in because I remember when this happened. So anyhow, I've had my rant here. It's Anything Goes Friday. I've got a couple more rants for you, but it's Anything Goes Friday, so we should be picking up your calls. John in Middletown, California. Hey, John, thanks for listening on Sirius XM. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
Love the program. I've been reading some tweets, and I'm thinking about the resistance and talking to some friends and whatnot. There's a lot of chatter going on about well, of course, fake accounts coming out of the White House that are supposed to be like rogue POTUS accounts and whatnot. But there's a lot of talk going on about people being really cautious, especially the protesters that are going down to Florida, or anybody who goes to Mar-a-Lago or those areas to decide they're going to go and protest, to be really cautious to make sure to keep them peaceful, respectful, and more importantly, it's probably better to protest the House, your congressmen, the different members that way, because frankly, it sounds like a lot of different alt-right groups, including Bannon's groups, are looking for a Reichstag event to try to frame, if you will, the leftists as being crazy liberals, and look, they're going to cause huge protests, and then more importantly, be able to pass legislation and EOs that could actually outlaw protests, quote unquote, to be able to push more of their agenda. And you spoke a lot about the 30s, you spoke a lot about 1932 up to 1935. And these are a lot of tactics that went on with brown shirts to really push the minority German population into the fervor that turned into the World War II that we saw. So just kind of a note.
I don't disagree. Another word of caution, and you know, on the one hand, I don't want to discourage people from protesting. On the other hand, we need to go into this eyes wide open. I mean, here in Washington, D.C., we had several hundred people rounded up and charged with felonies, including 6 journalists. The charges have been dropped against 5 of them, but still 6 journalists. One of them a friend of mine. We saw this happen when it was probably fewer than a dozen people who were committing the crimes, who were smashing windows. And the felony charges against the rest of them, to the best of my knowledge, has not been dropped. Anybody who's protesting at Mar-a-Lago, anybody who goes to the Florida events, or any other things where the president is, should expect 2 things to happen. One is your picture will be taken. You will be subject to facial recognition software. They will identify you, and they will put you in a database, whether it's the FBI database or whether it's the GOP. I don't know what. But, you know, number one, they are taking names. And number 2, if you bring your cell phone with you, anywhere the president goes, there is most likely a Stingray device. There are 18 or 19 of them, according to the right-wing newspaper here in Washington, D.C., the Washington Examiner in D.C. You can kind of notice it happen as you walk by the White House. You know, suddenly your phone starts discharging rapidly. And what these Stingray devices do is they pretend that they are a cell tower. And they pass through your phone calls, and they pass through the internet. Everything passes through them, so they're completely transparent. You don't even realize that your phone has been basically seized, but then they can just they can just empty your phone of information. And so, you know, be informed, right? John, thanks a lot for the call. Deidre in Birch Bay, Washington. Hey, Deidre, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you. Okay, this is where I have a concern. The next 4 years, if the Electoral College was the determining factor for Donald Trump becoming president, what's going to stop those same people from doing the exact same thing 4 years from now? You know, if we won the popular vote, it doesn't matter if the Electoral College determines who the president is, and the same people do the same thing again. Where is our hope?
Well, our hope is, you know, there was Hillary Clinton, if she had gotten fewer than 100,000 more votes in, I think it's around 20 counties. I'd have to go back and look, but, you know, in a relatively small area, which was doable. In fact, if she had just gotten the vote level that Barack Obama had gotten in those counties, she'd be president of the United States right now. So this was a problem of voter turnout, and you know, you can there's a bunch of different theories about why that is. Was it, you know, a weak candidate? Was it a lousy campaign? Was it that the media was, and this is my favorite, was it that the media for 6 months had been telling us, or for a year really, a year and a half, had been telling us, Hillary's got this thing in the bag, don't worry, she's going to win, she's going to be president, Democrats might even take the House, they're going to sweep the Senate, don't worry, it's all good. And the effect of that was that Democrats, who might otherwise be, you know, activated and animated to go out and vote, said, you know, it's a big hassle to vote. I think I'll just stay at work today, you know. I'm not going to take time off from work and, you know, lose a couple hours of pay, or, you know, go through the hassle or try to park and all that stuff, and I have to find my ID and et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a matter, Deidre, I'm not hopeless at all. I see this as, you know, this whole Trump phenomena, you know, assuming that we can make it through 4 years without flipping into full-out fascism, without a state of emergency being declared, without a 9/11 kind of event that would cause Donald Trump to have the power to legally mobilize the National Guard across the country and perhaps even the Army. You know, Posse Comitatus got taken down during the Bush administration, so now it's legal for the Army to shoot at American civilians. It was illegal since the Civil War. And so, you know, if that doesn't happen, I think, you know, in the 2020 election, we have huge opportunities. But the really important one, frankly, you know, everybody's looking at 2020, but the really important one is 2018. This is going to determine so much of what happens. And so the work that we have to do is make sure that all our friends are registered to vote, that we're registered to vote, that check with your Secretary of State and make sure that your voter registration has not been deleted by Chris Kobach and his merry band, and continue waking people up. Tell people about progressive media. Tell them about your favorite progressive websites. I can tell you that just in the neighborhood where I live, in the community in the Marina where I live, I've turned a half a dozen people onto a couple of progressive websites, commondreams.org, alternate.org, opednews.com, and people are like, whoa, I never knew this stuff was on the internet. Wow, this is cool, because they've been kind of living in this Fox world, or at the very least, the CNN world. So, and we've got, I got an email this morning from somebody who lives just down the road from me going, hey, we watch your show every day, it's your radio show. And it's like, spread the word. That's what we've got to do, Deidre. That's what we've got to do. And this is, a lot of people are waking up on the one hand. On the other hand, these guys are cunning, and they're working from a playbook that was developed in the 1930s, not just in Germany, but also in Spain, also in Italy. It was done by Pinochet in Chile. It was done in Argentina. It was done in Mexico. It's been done over and over and over again. It's an old and easily read playbook, and they are working this thing. Yesterday was no accident, no mistake, no screw up. It wasn't incoherent. It was exactly what it was supposed to be. And we need to be pushing back. Deidre, thank you for the call. John in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Hey, John, thanks for listening to WCPT. What's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. I called the other day while you had the people about Medicare on, and I just want to say I'm having Medicare. I was in the hospital for 47 days, and I got my bill. Medicare is awesome.
Yeah, your bill was zero, right?
No, $1,200 out of $352,000.
$1,200, yeah. That's close enough to zero for me. Yeah. My similar experience, and with my back surgery and everything. It's single payer health care really, really works, and it really works well in the United States. And we need to be promoting that. And anybody who's over 65 who's on Medicare needs to tell their kids, needs to tell their relatives, needs to tell anybody who's under 65, hey, this thing works. And beware of Medicare Advantage, by the way, because that doesn't work so well. And then you end up wholly dealing with a health insurance company that's going to try and screw you. John, thanks a lot for the call. Thanks for listening to WCPT. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a few minutes. It's Anything Goes Friday.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Anything Goes Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with your calls after. And welcome back. Michael in Imperial Beach, California, watching on Free Speech TV. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, Mr. Hartmann. Okay, after yesterday's press conference, wondering your thoughts on the difference between an incompetent buffoon like Hitler, who at least had to struggle to get where he got, and as Representative Mark Pocan said, this man, Trump, thinks he is more like a king, has never had to struggle a day in his life.
Yeah.
Wondering your thoughts on the difference between an evil buffoon who had to struggle to become a deranged buffoon and one who has had everything his whole life and has never had to struggle.
Yeah. In fact, Hitler's biography or autobiography was called Mein Kampf, which in German means my struggle. And you're right, Michael, sort of. I believe that Donald Trump, suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, probably attention deficit disorder, among other things, maybe full-blown sociopathy, that Donald Trump actually did struggle. That through his childhood, he was rejected by both his father and his mother. He was sent off to military academy. He was largely rejected. And you see the result of that rejection in his constant need to remind himself of how much people love him, and to surround himself with people who tell him that they love him. And when you see the countries that get what they want from him, whether it's Japan with Shinzo Abe coming over repeatedly to tell Donald Trump how wonderful he is, or Netanyahu telling him how wonderful he is, it's just whoever butters him up the most gets what they want. And what this tells me is that this is a very wounded guy. So maybe he didn't struggle economically, like Hitler did. I mean, Hitler made a living as a street painter in Vienna, and he was such a lousy painter he couldn't paint people, so he just painted the buildings. Or maybe he just had a psychopathy that prevented him from viewing people as real things, and he couldn't paint them. But Hitler, and he fought in World War I, and he was nearly blinded by a mustard gas attack and was in the hospital for months, which is when he started writing Mein Kampf. And and then of course he got arrested after the beer hall incident in Munich and finished Mein Kampf there with the help of Rudolf Hess. I would bet you anything, Michael, that if you were to sit down with Donald Trump and say, "Tell me about the struggles of your life," and if he was being genuine, if he knew that it was essentially off the record, that he would share some pretty cringeworthy stuff with you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And but what do you think about Stephen Miller, his new whatever?
I don't know enough about Stephen Miller. I've seen a couple of clips of him, and I've read a few stories about him. He went to what's the school? Duke, I think. And
I think it was.
Pardon?
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And today I saw an open letter to Steve Miller from his graduating class at Duke, saying, "Did you go to the same school we did? We were multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural. We had a high level of tolerance. We were, and what happened to you, buddy?" But beyond that, and he's 31 years old, I think, and making policy for the United States. There's a difference between smart and wise. Wisdom is, applying intelligence to experience, or applying experience to intelligence, actually. And I don't think anyone who's 31 can be wise. And I realize that may insult some 31-year-olds, but when I was 31, I was certain I was wise. Now that I'm 65, I'm certain that I wasn't when I was 31. Michael, thank you for your call. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Andy in Grand Rapids, Michigan, listening on WTRR. Hey, Andy, what's up?
Hey, buddy. Hey, did you just say TRR or did you say PRR?
It says TRR here. Am I miss?
Yep. No, W per, correct.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, they keep, I think we need to change the wording, when they keep saying that your entitlements, Social Security is entitlements, Medicare is entitlements. No, we're paying for that. We're paying for that.
Well, that's the basis of your entitlement to it, is that you paid for it. If you put $100 in the bank, you are entitled to go to the bank and get $100.
Well, exactly. But to me, I look at it like that's my benefit.
Yeah, it is. It is. Andy, the Republicans have done such a good job of demonizing the word entitlement that it has come to mean, in the minds of some people, something completely different than it means in the dictionary. But I mean, literally, if you put $100 in the bank, you're entitled to take $100 out. You're not entitled to take 101, but you're entitled to take anything up to $100. And, similarly, if you pay into Social Security throughout your life and Medicare, you're entitled when you reach the appropriate age to take the amount of money out that reflects what you put in. And actually, the amount that you put in does change the amount that you get out, at least with Social Security, not Medicare. So I'm fine with the word entitlement, and I think that we need to revive it, and we need to give it a new birth, just like with the word liberal. During the early Limbaugh years in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this whole movement in the Democratic Party to stop using the word liberal, and everybody got afraid of the word liberal because Rush Limbaugh had successfully demonized it. And now the word liberal is back, and I think that we need to take back entitlements, if I may respectfully.
We paid for it. They're not paying into this.
That's right. We paid for it. We're entitled to it. I'm with you. Andy, thank you for the call. Nick in Ithaca, New York, listening on WRFI. Hey, Nick, what's up?
Hey, Mr. Hartmann. Something struck me this morning listening to Amy Goodman's show, which I do every day, and now it struck me again listening to your show. And that is that I'm afraid the progressive radio broadcasts are preaching to the choir, so to speak.
Oh, so are conservative radio broadcasts. That's the nature of the beast.
And well, my question is, how do we get the people that we want to change to listen to shows like yours and Amy's?
I think it's going to have to happen organically. It's, you know, when the Limbaugh phenomena started, I was paying careful attention to this because I had been in radio. My first, you know, real job in the, I mean, when I was a young teenager, I worked at Henry's Hamburgers and whatnot. But my first real job was when I was 16 as a DJ at WITL in Lansing, Michigan. And so I've been in the media basically since I was, you know, in fact, since before I was, you know, out of school. And the thing that I noticed about Limbaugh is that there was nobody else doing what he was doing at the time. There had been before. There had been a guy named Alan Berg, who in the late 70s and the early 80s was the most popular talk show host in America. He operated out of a radio station in Denver that blew a signal over about 30 states. It was a massive signal, a 50,000-watt signal. And Alan Berg was, you know, just, you know, famous, at least from the Mississippi West in virtually all those states. And he was a diehard liberal. And he was, you know, he was the first Rush Limbaugh. And that spread by word of mouth. And there was a lot of people who listened to Alan Berg until two skinheads, you know, two Nazis machine gunned him to death in the parking lot of the radio station. So after Alan Berg died, then came Rush Limbaugh. And Limbaugh came with better security and more money. And, you know, well-funded and on stations all across the nation instantly, which is something that you don't make happen unless you've got, you know, some good billionaire funding. But also unless you're really talented. And Rush Limbaugh is really talented. And that, you know, I started listening to Rush Limbaugh. A lot of people who were progressive started listening to Limbaugh because A, he was there and he was entertaining and he was interesting. And B, there was pretty much nothing else. But I think that, Nick, if you're concerned that we're only speaking to ourselves, reach out to your friends who maybe, you know, even people who don't agree with your politics and say, hey, did you know about WRFI in Grand Rapids, or excuse me, in Ithaca, New York? You know, this station has got, you know, a great progressive lineup. And if you, you know, even if you're a conservative, you really need to listen to the other side, if nothing else, so that you can know how to argue against the other side and get people into it. Nick, thanks for the call. John in Chicago, listening on WCPT. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Just want to say thank you for taking all these calls. You have the most level-headed approach to these issues. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, isn't it crazy that we don't have an election day? Like, why don't we all have off work so we can vote?
Right.
You know?
And why isn't it on, you know, over a weekend? It should be both Saturday and Sunday so that we honor the holidays of you know, both Jews and Christians. I believe the Muslim Sabbath is Friday, so it wouldn't interfere with that either. And you know, and declare them holidays. You know, if you're going to keep it as a Tuesday, seriously, you know, declare it a national holiday. I totally agree with you, John. It's.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one other thing. I think we can really use Trump if we're careful about it and we really strengthen these other branches of our government, because it's been a long time since I've heard anything positive from around the world about Americans, the citizens. Mm-hmm. And ever since this ban, quote unquote, that was put out there, we protested. We showed up. The American people showed up and showed that we care about our immigrants. We care about the people coming into this country. And I think it really boosted the level of the world's view on the citizens while decreasing their view on the government, you know. So if we can get some good stuff out of this guy and then get him out of here, why not?
Yeah, it's we need to establish that we are in solidarity with the rest of the world in opposition to a you know, crazed Cheeto-faced maniac in the White House. Well said, John. Thanks. Mike in Burton, Michigan. Hey, Mike. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Pleasure and honor to speak to you. Just thank you for all that you do. I don't think you realize just how adept you are at putting into words what the rest of us are thinking and feeling.
Well, thank you, John. Mike.
I listen to you every single day, and I used to listen to Randy Rhodes as well. I remember something she said, and it was akin to what you just mentioned a little bit earlier about be careful that with all this chaos going on, that because when this chaos is happening, they're doing something else.
Right. Yeah, they made it illegal for mentally ill people to buy weapons. They made it legal for the coal companies to dump more crap in the rivers, and called it a jobs bill. You know, I'm sorry, disposing of the coal crap actually creates jobs. Dumping it in the rivers doesn't. unless, you know, river waste dumper is a job description that's really important to Donald Trump.
You can just tell that they don't really respect the rule of law, and they make a complete mockery of government, and they really ultimately would love to tear it all down. You can tell by their choices for the cabinet.
And there's a reason for that, Mike. It's because government is the only thing that keeps back the power of transnational corporations and billionaires. And so if you can shrink government's power, you radically increase the power of the billionaires and the big corporations. And by the way, it's the billionaires and the big corporations who are paying the very politicians who are saying we've got to have smaller government. And that's no accident. There's an absolute causal relationship there. It's cause and effect. Mike, well said. Thank you so much for the call, and thanks for listening to Sirius XM. We'll be back coming up on the top of the hour here. Stick around. We'll be back after the news. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Welcome back to Thom Hartmann University Book Club. We're reading today from Screwed, The Undeclared War Against the Middle Class and What We Can Do About It. This is from Chapter 3, The Rise of the Corporatocracy, and it's in the middle of the chapter. It's the subchapter or subhead is Feudalist Takeover. America was not conceived of as a feudal state, F-E-U-D-A-L, feudalism being broadly defined as rule by the super rich. Our nation was created in large part in reaction against centuries of European feudalism. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said in his lecture titled The Fortune of the Republic, delivered on December 1st, 1863, quote, "We began with freedom. America was opened after the feudal mischief was spent. No inquisitions here, no kings, no nobles, no dominant church," end quote. The founding idea of America was that our country would not be ruled by a handful of very powerful rich men. America was founded as a country ruled by we the people. And for democracy to work, there had to be a strong and broad middle class. Even at our country's founding, there were some who who couldn't quite shake the idea that aristocracy was the way to go. As Jefferson warned in a letter in 1826 to William B. Giles, there are even those who, quote, "look to a single and splendid government of an aristocracy founded on banking institutions and moneyed corporations under the guise and cloak of their favorite branches of manufactures, commerce and navigation, riding and ruling over the plundered plowmen and beggared yeomanry, farmers and factory workers.
This will be to them the next blessing of the monarchy, to the monarchy of their first aim and perhaps the surest stepping stone to it. The aristocracy that Jefferson feared rose first during the Gilded Age in the 1880s, when just a few companies seized control of much of America, including many of our elected officials. The major form of transportation and communication in those days was the railroads, and the railroads were owned by the Vanderbilts. The major form of energy then, as today, was oil, monopolized by John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Trust. And the major form of trade was in manufactured goods, which required factories, which in turn required steel, monopolized by Andrew Carnegie and his Carnegie Steel Company. These monopolists required ways to retain their hold on the money, so they turned to financiers like Jay Gould and John Pierpont Morgan, who set up large trusts for them. The Progressive Movement and then FDR beat back these monopolists with the Sherman Antitrust Act, the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act, and other laws that regulated the game of business. Then Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, and George Bush Jr. came along and turned back the clock. Reagan fought the labor laws. Bush Sr. pushed for fast-track trade authority for the president. Clinton finally took down trade protections with NAFTA. And Bush Jr. put corporate executives into the driver's seat on government legislation. We've entered a new robber baron era. Today, the major form of communication is by phone and the internet in an area increasingly monopolized by the new AT&T, formerly SBC Singular AT&T. The major form of energy, oil, is controlled by just a handful of companies. Today's economic driver is the computer. Its software is monopolized by Microsoft, and its hardware is manufactured by a handful of oligarchs. Today, as in the Gilded Age, the rich are richer than ever. Forbes crows that in 2005, the rich got richer as the collective net worth of the United States' wealthiest climbed $125 billion to $1.13 trillion. That's greater than the gross domestic product of Spain or Canada. Bill Gates alone is worth $51 billion. 5 Walton family members, the owners of Walmart, made it into the top 10. Meanwhile, median household income fell for the 5th year in a row. In 1972, the median income for a person with a high school diploma was the equivalent of $42,600 in today's dollars. In 2002, the last year for which the National Center for Education Statistics compiled such numbers, a person with a high school diploma has a median income of $29,600. As the rich got richer, the rest of us got poorer, particularly what used to be of our middle class. The hallmark of the corporatocracy is monopoly. Fewer people holding more of the wealth, fewer companies holding more of the commons. The very competition that the conservatives claim to embrace is destroyed by the unrestrained growth of corporate interests. Big fish eat little fish over and over until there are no little fish left. And they eat the middle-sized fish until they're gone too. Look at the thoroughfares of any American city and ask yourself how many of the businesses here are locally owned. Instead of cash circulating within the local economy, at midnight, every night a button is pushed and the local money from all over America is vacuumed away to Little Rock or Chicago or New York. And the corporate lords want more. Not content with their hold over the private sector, they want to take over the public sector too. When Jeb Bush was governor of Florida and cut a deal with Enron to privatize the Everglades, it diminished the power of the Florida government to protect a natural resource and enhanced the power and profitability of Enron. Similarly, when politicians argue for harsher sentencing guidelines and also advocate more corporate-owned prisons, they're enhancing the power and profits of one of America's fastest-growing and most profitable remaining domestic industries, privately owned prisons. The cons look at the government's pollution controls and see regulations that get in the way of their profits. They look at single-payer health care and see a threat to the pharmaceuticals industry's practice of price gouging. They look at Social Security and see an opportunity for more bonuses for Wall Street fat cats. And on it goes. The book is Screwed.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Well, the Republicans have come up with their health care proposal. The New York Times has 2 stories about it today. One is in the Upshot, the public health column. This is by Margot Sanger-Katz. It has the best headline. I'll get to that second. The other one is just in the main news section. It's by Robert Pear and Thomas Kaplan. The headline for that one is House GOP leaders outline plan to replace Obama Health Care Act. And they say, and I'm quoting from the article here. This is today's New York Times. This is the new Trump Care. It would fundamentally remake Medicaid, a great society program that provides health care to more than 70 million Americans, not just the poor, but also middle-class people who have run out of money and need nursing home care. Under the plan, Medicaid, an open-ended entitlement program designed to cover all health care costs, would be put on a budget. The Affordable Care Act subsidies, which expand as incomes decline, giving poorer people more help, would be replaced by fixed tax credits to help people purchase insurance policies. Mr. Price, the guy who was just put in charge of HHW or HHS, told House Republicans that Mr. Trump is, quote, all in on this. Meanwhile, over at the Upshot, the headline, this is the article that I think is, more to the point. Republican health proposal would redirect money from poor to rich. And just let that sink in for a minute. This is not a headline on Alternet or on Common Dreams or on truthout.org. This is a headline in the New York Times. Republican health proposal would redirect money from the poor to the rich. Margot Sanger-Katz writes, now we have the outline of that plan, and it looks as if it would redirect federal support away from poorer Americans and toward people who are wealthier. They're going to pass it through budget reconciliation, which only takes 50 votes. The plan makes major changes in how health care is financed. Quoting from the article, it would substantially cut funding for states in providing free insurance to low-income adults through Medicaid. And it would change how tax credits are distributed by giving all Americans not covered through work a flat credit by age, regardless of income. The Republican plan would result in many more low-income people losing out on coverage if they can't find the money to pay the gap between their fixed tax credit and the cost of the health plan. The article goes on to say similar tax credit plans from House Speaker Paul Ryan and Tom Price, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, would result in millions losing coverage, according to independent estimates. The plan includes additional features that redistribute resources from the poor to the rich. Yes, it actually says that in this article in the New York Times today. The plan includes additional features, these are not bugs, these are features, that redistribute resources from the poor to the rich. It would allow Americans to sock more money away for health spending in special tax-free health savings accounts. The benefits of such accounts fall largely to higher-income people who pay more in taxes, and I would add, have the money left over to put it in a checking account, into a health savings account. The vast majority of Americans, well over 60% of Americans, are not prepared to deal with a $1,000 emergency. And the Republicans want to tell us that every single one of us should be putting $5,000 to $10,000 a year from the extra money we have at our paychecks, right? I get it. The Republican lawmakers, they all easily have an extra $5,000 or $10,000 in their paychecks, or in the campaign funds and super PACs and whatnot, which they can extract cash out of that the billionaires have given them money for. But most Americans don't. If this passes, get ready, because we're going to go back to the dark old days when 45,000, according to Harvard University, 45,000 Americans a year were dying because America was entirely, our health insurance system was not entirely, largely funded by for-profit banksters that call themselves health insurance companies. Meanwhile, the Associated Press is reporting, Shelby Livingston writing for the Associated Press, the Justice Department, remember in the last hour I said, Medicare is great. I was telling you about my experience with Medicare with a simple Medigap policy, which is, an extra $100 a month. Medicare is great, but don't go with Medicare Advantage. Somebody tweeted this out, and it's just perfect, so timely. The U.S. Justice Department has joined a whistleblower lawsuit claiming that United Health Group and affiliated health plans have been gaming the Medicare program and fraudulently collecting millions of dollars. The lawsuit, initially brought in 2011 and unsealed Thursday after a 5-year-long investigation by the Justice Department, alleges that Minnetonka, Minnesota-based United Healthcare has inflated its plan members' risk scores since at least 2006 in order to boost payments under Medicare Advantage's risk adjustment program. Now, what this means, what they're saying here, with Medicare Advantage, what you're doing is you're giving up your Medicare. And you're signing up for a health insurance program from a for-profit company. United Healthcare is the largest that provides them. But the premiums are quite low. And you say, well, premiums seem to be the same as Medicare, so it must just be like even better than Medicare because it says Advantage. Isn't that wonderful? But the way it works is that Medicare writes a check to the health insurance company to backstop the money that you're giving the health insurance company. So you give them $200 a month, and the government gives them $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $3,000 a month, whatever it may be. And the amount of money that the government gives to the health insurance company is based on the health insurance company telling the government how sick you are, and therefore what they can expect in expenses. And according to this lawsuit, well, to continue reading the article by Shelby Livingston in today's Associated Press, the lawsuit claims that in 2010, United Health planned to increase operating income by $100 million through Project 7, which was the company's code work for initiatives to increase risk adjustment payments. In other words, lying to Medicare about how sick the people were so that they could make more money. This is a company whose CEO has taken over $1 billion by saying, in fact, I'm going to retweet this article right now. It's just brilliant. And thanks to Imzadi, who tweeted it to me in the first place. This is just, surprise, surprise. You've got for-profit banksters in charge of people's, retirement health insurance, in charge of their Medicare. And there's fraud? Oh, my God. There's gambling in Casablanca? Who would have thought? And yet the Republican new health care plan that you can read about in today's New York Times, there's Peace Over Common Dreams, they're all over the place. The new Republican health care plan, basically the same thing. Let's shove more and more people into the tender mercies of the for-profit health insurance companies who will recycle that profit back to us in campaign contributions.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with your calls. It's Anything Goes Friday. Stick around. Welcome back. Don, watching Free Speech TV in Seattle on your public access cable system, I'm assuming, Don?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call, Tom. Yeah, I'm really concerned about the immigration thing. I was watching Amy Goodman this morning, too, and she had two stories, one of which involved a local young Hispanic man, aged 23, that lives in the Des Moines area south of Seattle. His home was raided by ICE agents, and they originally were going after his father. Then they grabbed his son, handcuffed him, and took him down. There's a detention center in the Tacoma Shipyards area, 1,500 private prison facility there in the Tacoma Shipyard area. And I was thinking, my God, and I just read an article in the Seattle Times last night. How about in the harvest season for our apples, pears, cherries, and other fruit? Who's going to pick all those if we round up all the migrant workers? Because they pay them pretty well. I mean, we grow like 80% of the world's apples sold commercially in an area east of the Cascades and Wenatchee and Lake Chelan area, and they're paid like $20 an hour and whatnot, and there's certain fruits and vegetables that cannot be harvested by machines; they have to be picked by human pickers.
Right.
And this is going to be devastating to our state economy, to the whole agricultural economy up and down the West Coast. So it's just awful. And met people from various countries over the last 10 years. They're all wonderful people. Nobody appeared to be threatening to me, a rapist or a terrorist. And people work in the health field, all kinds of industries here in Western Washington. And it's going to collapse our state economy if they're really aggressive, like they're starting to be, rounding up people supposedly, quote-unquote, illegal immigrants, many of which are on that DACA program.
Yeah.
You've heard about that, So
well, that's the real tragedy. They've now arrested 2 DACA kids.
Yeah.
These are the Dreamers. This is the
Dreamers,
deferred. The D in DACA stands for deferred. I don't remember the rest of the acronym, but basically it's like, we're not. If you come in every 2 years and register with us, tell us where you live, tell us what you're up to. You have to have been in the country before 2007. You have to have come into the country as a child. You have to have been under a certain age. Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's very, very tight and difficult to get into. And this was, by the way, put into place in 2011, as I recall, by executive order from President Obama. So DACA can be undone in 10 seconds by Donald Trump by simply signing an executive order, rescinding a previous executive order. This was not done legislatively. The Republicans would not go along with it. So, now that they're apparently using the DACA list as a hit list, or perhaps intending to. This is dark stuff. I mean, this is why we really need immigration reform in this country. Comprehensive.
I don't understand why the Republicans are worried about changing the vetting system. We already have a thoroughly system to vet people.
There's a very simple answer, Don.
Yeah.
They don't vet white people from Europe like that. It's all about the color of these people's skins. And many of them make no, who's the right winger who writes all the books? The kind of the public intellectual. He's kind of older now. He used to be on cross firing line. Damn, I'm missing his name. Anyhow, he's been a guest on our program. He wrote a book where he came right out and said, say. Yeah, Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan came right out and said it. We're losing American culture, right? Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with me. Whew, what a day, huh? Drew in Kansas. Hey, Drew, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I wanted to talk about a way we need to rebrand, and we can rebrand trickle-down economics to really hit them hard. Let's consider when Reagan originally announced his plans for the presidency where he was, in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
That's not where he made his announcement. That's where he made his first campaign speech after he was nominated by the party.
Then where he made his first campaign speech. This is where a number of activists, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if they were lynched or shot.
It was three guys who were tortured, and I believe they were shot. I believe, and then they were buried in a levee, and along with their car. And Schwimmer, Goodwin, and Cheney were their names.
And all of this is predicated on old economics from the South, I would argue, more than anything.
Yep.
It's anti-union, based upon labor, that you're not paying people for, you're cheating them out of when it's non-union. We've seen how Walmart will not pay people for time served or tell them to clock stuff a certain way. And all of this is coming back from slavery. It's just all tied in together.
Yeah, it's the feudal system, F-E-U-D-A-L, not futile, but feudal. It's the feudal system, the old European feudal system, which has been replicated in large part in the form of the corporation in America, but also in its most sinister aspects is slavery and racism and all that kind of thing. By the way, Drew, question for you: do you know where Donald Trump Jr. gave his first campaign speech after his father was nominated to be president?
I'm going to assume North or South Carolina?
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
And
in front of an all-white crowd.
I wanted to ask you real quick, do you know where I can find, what website I can find to get in touch with my member in the Kansas Democratic Party who's going to be voting in the DNC election?
Wow. Go to ourrevolution.com and see if they have the list there, because Larry Cohen, who's the CEO, gave me that list. I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me. and I'm not even sure where I put it. But the list is out there. It should be something that you can find on the internet without too much trouble.
Right.
And the easy way, Drew, your state Democratic Party should be in the phone book. Just call them. I mean, it should be easily found.
Right.
Give them a call and ask them. So yeah, and good luck. Good luck.
Thanks, Tom.
We all need to be lobbying our Democratic parties. And Rich, hang on just a second. And apropos of that, by the way, yesterday somebody called and said he showed up for his Democratic Party, and basically the guy who's the chairperson of the local Democratic Party said, we're not even going to have a meeting for a couple months. We really don't want to talk about this. Kind of, leave us alone, and that sort of thing. And what did I do with it? I guess I'll have to come back to this later. But I got an email. Oh, here it is, right here. It's on top of my stack. I got an email. I'm not sure if he wants to be named on the air, so I'll just say that this is the county chair of a Democratic Party in Texas who sent me a note. And he said, I heard this come up on your radio show today, and it's not the first time it came up. I tried to call in, but it got a busy signal. And, apologies. We've got 10 inbound lines, and they're usually all jammed. He said, you suggested he call a special meeting and try to remove the person, but check the county party bylaws first. Advise anyone with this problem to check first with their state Democratic Party, and especially ask if there are any rules that cover this. In most states, the county party rules, if they even exist, are secondary to the state party rules. In Texas and other states, they are both actually secondary to provisions of the election code. Yes, as odd as it may sound, these things are often incorporated in state law. If there is no mechanism, they need to start a campaign now, in all caps, NOW, to run someone else when the position comes up for election again, usually in the party primary or through the convention process. He says, I know from experience that here in Texas, there is no provision for removing an AWOL or underperforming county chair before the end of their term, other than criminal acts and things like that. So that's his advice, and I pass that along. Rich in Cedro Woolley, Washington. Hey, Rich, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, apropos of the previous caller, I did call my congressional representatives and to express my support for Keith Ellison for the head of the DNC, and I inquired of the aides, are you getting a lot of calls about this? They said, well, we're getting a lot of calls, but not specifically about the DNC leadership. It's kind of like, I picture it kind of like a bubbling pot of boiling water. So if everybody out there right now, today, would pick up their phone and express their support, it'd be like throwing a big rock in that pot so we can spike those numbers and maybe catch their attention.
Yeah.
And then just kind of keep doing it. Because if we wait till the last minute, everybody's going to be calling in to express their support for everyone.
Yeah.
We just keep throwing rocks in that pot, maybe every Friday between now and the election.
Well, I think the election is next week, isn't it? Or is it the week after? It's either next week or early the week after. So it's happening pretty soon. Say what?
Was it mid-March, I believe?
Oh, I thought it was at the end of February. You may be right. I have a whole fact sheet on it that I was using last week, but I don't have it right at the top of my head. But yeah,
we got to catch their attention, though.
There you go. You're absolutely right, Rich. Thanks for the call. By the way, another thing, just as I'm thinking of things that I meant to mention. Earlier today, I talked about how I sent $5 to the Trump campaign a year and a half ago to get on their mailing list. A lot of people are trying to figure out when their Republican members of the House or Senate are going to be holding town halls. And there are a lot of resources out there to find that out. One of the easiest ways to do it, though, it's not, by the way, just Republicans and Democrats. One of the easiest way to do it is to go to their campaign page, not their congressional page. So to use Mark Pocan for an example, there's pocan.house.gov. That's his official page. But the members of Congress can't raise money on their official pages. So if you Google it, there's in fact, there has to be there, because members of Congress are up every 2 years. So they all have, continuous campaign pages. I'm not sure what Mark Pocan's is, but and he's not a right winger, but just, to use him as an example because he was on the air yesterday. And besides that, it's always a good idea to, send money to people that you agree with. But I'm suggesting, so you Google, or search, DuckDuckGo or whatever, the Pocan campaign website or Pocan campaign, something like that. And you find that, But if it's a right winger and you want them to start telling you every time they're coming into your district to hold a town hall and where it's going to be and when it's going to be, they're only sending that information out to the people that they think are their supporters because they want their supporters to show up. So if you're living in Darrell Iss's district, send $2 to his campaign. Right? Go to his website and put $2 in. It's worth $2, right? It's not going to help him that much. And you might be able to do it with even $1. It might take $5. I don't know what the minimum donation is these days with a credit card. But, give them $1 or $2, and they will put you on the email list. And they will announce to you when they're coming to the district to hold a town hall, and then you can show up and tell them what you think of them. So, pretty straightforward stuff. This is kind of guerrilla warfare, but pretty straightforward stuff. So anyhow, it's Anything Goes Friday. We will be taking more of your calls after the break. Stick around. We'll also be checking in with Talk Media News in about 15, 20 minutes. About 20 minutes. But it's wide open for the day, whatever you'd like to talk about. And we'll be back with your calls in just a moment. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Remember I told you yesterday that the press conference was not a mistake. It was actually a way of kicking off Trump's base. He's doing it now in South Carolina. The cross currents and dynamics at work in this evolving Trump administration are absolutely fascinating. He has virtually none of the institutional Republicans on board with the populist message that got him elected to the White House. Right? If Donald Trump had said, okay, here's my message, guys. I'm going to be a classic Republican running for president, and I want to privatize Medicare. I want to turn Social Security over to Wall Street. I want to roll back the protections for gay people. I want to undo Roe v. Wade. I want to strengthen the drug law and build more private prisons. I want to privatize all aspects of healthcare in the United States. The list just goes on and on. If he had said, we're gonna certify Citizens United, and we're gonna put it into legislation, and in addition to the Supreme Court, we're gonna continue the war on drugs. We're gonna continue our building our military he did say that. We're gonna have more money for defense contractors. We're gonna push for the TPP and other trade deals. If he had said those things, he never would have gotten elected. If Donald Trump had gone through the Republican agenda, he never would have gotten elected. But he didn't. He defied the Republican Party in their own primary. He got elected to the Republican, as the Republican candidate for president of the United States by saying George W. Bush was the worst president in history. I will not touch your Social Security or Medicare. We're going to bail out the people instead of the banksters. Some of these banksters need to be going to jail. The TPP is dead on arrival, and in fact, I'm going to tear down NAFTA and all that other stuff. That's the stuff he got elected on. Now, he threw in a few sops to the racists, the homophobes, actually, it wasn't so much an anti-gay agenda other than having Mike Pence on his platform, on his ticket. Mike Pence is arguably the most virulently anti-gay politician in the United States of any consequence. Certainly one of the most anti-woman politicians in the United States of any consequence. But Trump didn't run on that. Trump ran on this populist stuff. And you will not find a Republican who will agree with him on these things. There used to be populist and progressive Republicans. Not just
Howard Taft and William Howard Taft and Teddy Roosevelt. But, there used to be progressive Republicans, in the 60s and 70s. The real purge of the Republican Party, getting rid of the progressives in the Republican Party, happened in the 1980s, or began in the 1980s during the Reagan administration, and then really picked up steam during the George W. Bush administration. And so there's nobody left in the Republican Party who agrees with Donald Trump on the main things that people who voted for him for president were hoping he would do. So what's going to happen? Is he going to do it like Reagan and make it all smoke and mirrors? That's been my prediction all along. That he will spend a bunch of money on infrastructure, which will create a bunch of jobs and it'll stimulate the economy. And he'll do a giant tax cut for billionaires, but there'll be enough in that tax cut to give a couple $100 to the average person, which will stimulate the economy. And he'll say, see, the tax cuts worked. Trickle down actually does work. Ronald Reagan was right. When in fact, it wasn't the tax cuts, it was the infrastructure spending that did it. And, he and all the Republicans will lie about it as they've been doing for 40 years. And, it'll give them the power to do more and more of that. Or is Donald Trump going to actually stand up and say, I have no loyalty to these guys? The institutional Republican Party. In fact, I would say when he made Steve Bannon his chief strategist, it was a giant middle finger to the Republican Party. Steve Bannon is the guy who said that they should be, his phrase, bitch slapped, as I recall. Or I should say B-word slapped. It's my apologies. But you get my point. Is he going to take on the Republican Party? I don't think he will, unless we all help him a little. Not sure yet how to do that, but the strategies are evolving. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
There is a real opportunity here, I believe. We'll see.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a couple of quick things. Having a live chat room while we're on the air is really a cool thing because I can, it keeps me honest, if nothing else. Earlier I said the whip is the guy who runs, or a woman who runs around and collects votes and things. And Pat Sweeney in our chat room quoted from the Wikipedia. The expression whip in its parliamentary context has its origins in hunting terminology. The Oxford English Dictionary defines the term whipper in as a huntsman's assistant who keeps the hounds from straying by driving them back with the whip into the main body of the pack. So there's that. And then the other thing that I thought was that I wanted to share with you is DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Thank you for that, Sue. And the election for DNC committee chair is going to be held the weekend of February 23rd through 26th. So that's the weekend after next, if I'm doing my calendar math in my head right. So that's not this weekend, but the next weekend, a weekend after this one coming up. So it's basically 9 days from now or something like that, 8 days from now. Yeah. So all that said, let's get back to your phone calls. Donna in Minneapolis. Hey, Donna, thanks for listening to AM 950. What's up?
Hey, Tom. So yesterday, I looked at two op-eds about Trump's. I'm sorry. I'm looking at two things here. Forgive me. I'm just trying to get my head together here for you. So I was looking at two articles on Trump's, because he's a narcissist, his narcissistic disorder, and one had, I think, 21 people signed it. 21 people within the therapy industry signed it and said he absolutely cannot run the country. This disorder is going to get in the way. And then there was somebody else who actually wrote the protocol for it, and he said, no, I think, yes, he does have a narcissistic personality disorder, but it's not going to get in the way. Right. And then yesterday...
Well, there's a little bit of nuance there, Donna, if I could just clarify. In order to say that somebody has a disorder in psychology, psychiatry, I mean, you can say they meet the criteria for a disorder, but that's a whole different thing than saying that they have a disorder, because in order to say that they have a disorder, they have to be disabled by it. They have to be crippled by it. It has to injure their ability to function. And Donald Trump is a billionaire who's president of the United States. It's hard to say that this guy does not have the ability to function.
Right. So this is what I was getting to. Yesterday when there was a man that stood up and said that he thought that there was anti-Semitism that was coming out of the country. The first thing Trump did is shut him down by saying, I'm not an anti-Semite.
Right, he personalized it.
I'm not an anti... The guy did not say he was. He said that he was concerned about anti-Semitism. So it clearly got in the way because he couldn't hear what he was saying because of his own narcissism.
Could be, or it could be that he's 70 years old and he had a hard time hearing the guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, better man than I.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to understand why he would say something that seems stupid. And because as I said, I don't think he's a stupid man. But it
all right, well, we'll watch for more. It just struck me. It just struck me yesterday.
It was either that he misunderstood the question, or that the instructions that he's gotten from Steve Bannon is don't ever trash the anti-Semites. Don't ever trash the white supremacists. Don't ever go after those people. Don't even say the word Jew in the Holocaust Remembrance Day. Don't do it, because we've got to have that hard right, racist, anti-Semitic base, or we've lost our power. And in fact, those are our our stormtroopers. Those are the shock troops. Those are the Mussolini's black shirts and Hitler's brown shirts. Those are the people that we're going to be calling on. And so don't and by not calling out anti-Semitism in the United States, instead by personalizing it, I think that it was another dog whistle to all the anti-Semites in the country that this president is on their side. That's political strategy, in my opinion. Keep in mind, this is the guy that Alex Jones and all these other guys have endorsed. This is the guy that David Duke endorsed. Donna, thank you for the call. Dave in Radcliffe, Kentucky. Hey, Dave, what's up? Dave in Radcliffe, Kentucky? Okay, let's try Skip in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Skip, what's on your mind today?
Well, I want to thank you since Air America days for everything you've done for the country. Thanks, Tom.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a while.
I set up a question on 2016 a while back, and I sent you down the primrose path. You took it, I think, as a stick in your eye, and I didn't mean it that way. Could you comment on what the conditions are today that prompted you to say that we were going to have a crash? And are they worse or better or the same as when 2016 was published in 20?
The premise of the crash of 2016 was sort of threefold. One part was there's these cycles of history, and we generally don't go more than 80 years without a major crash, and we're 80 years out from the last crash. The second was that the Republicans have hollowed out the protective infrastructure that prevents crashes, things like Glass-Steagall, and have so empowered the grifters, scam artists, and ripoff artists within the banking and financial services industry that a crash is almost inevitable. And there's been the other piece of that is the enormous concentration of wealth at the top and poverty at the bottom. When you see that huge disparity, that huge wealth inequality, the last time wealth inequality was as bad as it is in the United States right now was literally 1929. And then the third part of it is really that the crash of 2007
was that crash. That was the crash that was due. And that crash of 2007, 2008 has not ended. All that has happened is that we have shoved a whole bunch of bubble gum into that hole in the dam to stop the water, but it's just bubble gum. And by that, I'm referring to things like quantitative easing and the Fed taking the interest rates down to below 0.5%. That is absolutely unsustainable. And the Fed is going to be meeting in March. They say that they're not going to raise interest rates. I think they will. We're in the 8th year of a stock market expansion. Since this is the longest since 1995, and it's the second longest since the Great Depression. So it's extremely unlikely that this stock market expansion is going to continue more than a few more months or maybe a year at the most. And in fact, the last 2 days, the market has been down. I'm not sure where it is right this moment. And that's not to say it's starting right this minute, but I'm completely out of the stock market now. I might be making a big mistake and missing out a great opportunity, but I did the same thing in 2007. I saw all these indicators, and only back then it was the mortgages. Now it's there's a number of other things that they're tranching and turning into collateralized debt obligations. $1 trillion worth of credit card debt, $1.5 trillion worth of student loan debt, about $5 trillion worth of auto loans. Most of it's subprime. There's a huge subprime auto loan market, and they're being tranched and turned into hundreds of trillions of dollars of CDOs. And so I would say that we are still in the crash. That's the third main premise of the book. And so none of those things have changed, and I absolutely expect that to happen. Make sense, Skip?
What advice would you give to people in, say, middle age that weren't there, haven't read about it, don't know about it? What advice would you tell them to do if they had to hedge against this crash, whether it's this year or 5 years from now? It's inevitable. What would you tell them to do?
Yeah. Well, I don't do investment advice. If you want investment advice, one of the companies that underwrites this program, that sponsors us, sponsor is the wrong word, underwrites us on the nonprofit side, is the Aiden Forecast. AidenForecast.com, I'm pretty sure, is their website. And it's two sisters who live down in Costa Rica, Pam and Marianne Aiden, and they've been writing this investment newsletter for, probably 30 years. I've been subscribing to it for over 15 years. And, we generally follow their advice, and we've done pretty well as a result of that. So if you're looking for investment advice, I would go to the Aiden Forecast, ADEN Forecast, rather than me, because when I follow my own advice on investing, I usually screw up. That said, looking at history, if you look back at what happened in 2007, 2008, which is the cleanest, the windshield is fairly clean there. You try to look back at the 1930s, it's a little more difficult to get good statistics and information. You really just have to talk to somebody who's old enough to remember it, or read one of the histories of the time that was written in the 40s and 50s. But generally speaking, the people who come out of an economic crash okay are the people who are either totally debt-free, because cash is king during a crash. It's even small amounts of cash. The people who are either totally debt-free or the people who are absolutely, totally consumed by debt that can be discharged, which right now does not include student loan debt, because you can't get rid of student loan debt and you can't get rid of debt to the IRS. So if a person is in a situation where they owe 95% on their house, where they've got $20,000 in credit card debt, where they're basically like in debt up to their eyeballs, and it's all dischargeable debt, you have a crash, those folks in that kind of situation can walk away from it through bankruptcy. Yes, it ruins your credit, but when crashes happen, so many people are getting their credit ruined, it kind of diminishes the impact of it over the long term. And on the other hand, the people who are fully debt free, they can ride it out. The people who get hurt the worst during an economic crash historically are the people who are in between. They got a $200,000 house and they owe $100,000 on it. They got a credit card with $5,000 on it, and then they lose their job. And now, if they lose their home, they've wiped out their equity. The bank takes the whole thing, that kind of thing. So this is not advice. This is just an observation, and I certainly would never advise anybody to get into debt up to your eyeballs with the anticipation of declaring bankruptcy. It's actually called fraud. But my point is that those those three places on the spectrum of debt or of wealth tend to be the places where people either do the best or the worst coming out of a depression. And then finally, learning how to be frugal, learning how to be self-sufficient. Examine your spending. Look at the things that you're doing. Do you really need to go out to that restaurant for dinner? Do you really need to go to that expensive restaurant when you could go to this cheaper restaurant, or you could make it at home? Looking, and that's just one example of 1,000 ways that we can all live more simply on the earth, which is just a good thing. Skip, thanks.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls right after this. And welcome back. Leonard in South Pasadena, California, watching us on DirecTV on Free Speech TV. Hey, Leonard, what's up?
Well, how you doing, Tom?
Great. What's on your mind?
Well, racism.
Yeah.
Racism, all it does is glorify the white race.
Typically.
Takes advantage of people.
Typically.
And that's why they created racism, so they can take advantage of a whole bunch of guys.
Yep.
The question is, how does the sun make somebody better or worse than somebody else?
In other words, the melanin in your skin, the content of the darkening pigment in your skin is a function of how much sun you've been exposed to and how much sun your ancestors for 300 generations have been exposed to.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. And it does create slight physiological differences, but intellectual, psychological, there are no differences. We're all people here. And, good point, Leonard. Very well said. Thank you. Jim in Newtown, Connecticut. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. It's great to talk to you again. Let me take you off speakerphone quick.
Sure. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Tom, I think it's very critical that we remove Trump as soon as possible, Pence or no Pence, if you would.
Yeah. There's a growing consensus around that, by the way, Jim.
I think Trump's high degree of narcissism, plus with his personality quirks, he winds up functioning as a magnet for the criticism, which is deflecting most of it away from the Republican Party.
Yep.
And I think, therefore, that in 2018 will be much better served if they can't hide behind him, as it were, so much anymore. And, I know they're being debated at the local level, but, even more so without him there.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it?
I think it's entirely possible. And then Pence basically plays the role of Jerry Ford, who just becomes the kind of, bumbling nice guy president. The problem is that while Jerry Ford actually was a bumbling nice guy, who was nowhere near as dumb as he was portrayed in the media, Mike Pence is not a bumbling nice guy. Mike Pence is a vicious dominionist. He's a vicious right-wing person who uses religion as a weapon against other people, and particularly gay people and people who don't fit his social agenda, and women. And
but at least it would expose it more. It would be
it may well.
It would be seen for what it is more.
Yeah, I agree. And Donald Trump, if nothing else, has a great ability to deflect, to get people to think in different terms and look in different ways and at different things. And so while he is signing the legislation that allows the coal companies to dump more waste in the rivers, he's saying, we're going to, this legislation is going to create jobs. It's going to give $50 million worth of regulatory relief. And, and all across America, Trumpistas are thinking, oh, my God, $50 million in regulatory relief. That's enough to hire a lot of people. And the Don Blankenships of the world, the coal barons are going, hey, $50 million bucks. We can raise our paychecks. We can pad the bottom line. We can have bigger stockholder dividends. They have no intention of giving that money to their workers, no intention of creating new jobs. In fact, by dumping their waste in the streams, which is what Donald Trump legalized yesterday, or the day before yesterday, by dumping their waste in the streams, they're eliminating the jobs of the people who used to have to process and dispose of the waste. So, it's like, up is down, down is up. It's bizarre. Jim, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back. Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News is with us. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And let's check in with Talk Media News, find out what's going on in the world. A report brought to you today by goatsfortheoldgoat.com. And on the line with us is Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News. Hey, Patrick, what's up? What's happening in the world today?
Hey, we are all trying to make sense this morning and this afternoon, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, on just what to make of President Trump's press conference yesterday. Believe it or not, even though plenty of pundits and certainly Trump opponents kind of thought it was off the rails and discordant and jumbled, it seems as if many in the Trump team actually think it was quite a large victory, and obviously Trump himself. But one, I'd love to get what your takeaways from it. I mean, my observations were, one thing that became really crystal clear to me when watching this press conference yesterday was just how much more Trump prefers campaigning versus governing. I mean, this was a classic campaign event, and really harks back, I think, to primary season. And he seems much more comfortable in that setting, as combative as it was, than he does, I think, in the day-to-day routine of governing. And I think being out there, I mean, there's some reports this morning that say there's two main reasons he wanted to do this. One, he was frustrated at his own surrogates and their ability to speak on his behalf, and his realization that he's his own best spokesperson. But two, and this was quite funny, the New York Times has it down as Trump being frustrated with how his tweets were not resonating within the mainstream media, and so by putting himself out there, he really kind of got his best bang for his buck.
I think he won. I think it was a tour de force. I believe that, and I agree with this group of renegade State Department people who tweeted a fairly long thing this morning about from Alt State Department, the Twitter handle, that if Trump is going to politically not just survive but succeed in everything he wants to accomplish, he doesn't need, over 50% polling. He doesn't need massive public opinion. He doesn't need the networks to love him. He needs his base to be activized and energized. He needs his base to be seriously either excited or pissed off, or both. And the first lesson that you learn when you study how to write fiction is that the hero of a story, the goodness of the hero of a story, is not defined by what the hero does. The goodness of a hero in a story is defined by how evil the bad guy is. If you had Superman without Lex Luthor, he'd be running around grabbing people who are sticking up 7-Elevens, and it would be a totally boring story. But when you've got a super villain, the villainy provides an opportunity for the hero to rise to that level. Trump is lacking a villain right now. There is no strong Democrat out there. Obama is gone. Hillary Clinton is gone. It just ain't happening. And so, as a consequence, he created the villain of the media, and he goes out to do battle against them. And it first of all, it immunizes, his people who mostly watch Fox News, which is very disconnected from the other networks in terms of how they report and what they report. It validates that worldview, that bubble that they live in. And secondly, it was the beginning of a campaign. And the proof of this, that this was not just, he woke up one morning and said, these people aren't doing a good job, I'm going to run out here and do it, is that. And I'm not sure if you're on his list, Patrick, but I gave $5 to the Trump campaign a year and a half ago, and probably most of these campaigns you don't even have to give them money; you can just sign up on their website. And within minutes of his getting off the air, I get an email from him saying, we need your help to take on the corporate media. And there was this 10-page questionnaire that was a push poll. And, about all these different issues and things, and they, phrased, do you disagree with, or do you agree with how terribly the mainstream media misreported my Muslim ban, that kind of stuff, He didn't call it a Muslim ban, obviously, my travel ban. So this was organized. This took at least a couple of days to put together. A lot of thought went into this, and I think that he absolutely succeeded in what he was trying to do yesterday.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you can tell by just the fact that everyone led with it. It's all anybody can talk about. Every network went live to cover this. And you're absolutely right about that survey. I mean, I got it afterwards, and it seemed as if it was no surprise. And on top of that, you're absolutely right that this is sort of the start of a campaign, and the best evidence of that is both that email that you just mentioned and also the fact that Trump is headed to Florida this weekend for a major campaign rally.
Yeah, and he's doing one right now. He just finished one in South Carolina.
Exactly. And, the other thing I would say is, even if you don't like Trump, Trump is not terrible at these moments. I mean, he's a showman. He knows how to sort of captivate an audience. And to his credit, he did take questions from, CNN and NBC and all these places that he sort of claims are fake news. But, he is good at putting on this type of show. He can be charming at times.
He's been doing it his whole life.
Exactly.
Yeah, he is who he always was. And what he always did, he used to lie about his real estate deals. Now he's lying about American politics.
Right. I mean, the only thing I would caution him, and I'd be curious if you agree with this, is, I do kind of come from the school of thought that in the end, the press always kind of wins. I think Nixon sort of
didn't happen in 33 in Germany.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Didn't happen in 29 in Italy. I mean, it didn't happen in Pinochet's Chile. It didn't happen in Argentina. The list goes on and on. The first, typically somebody who has designs to be a tyrant, even a soft tyrant, the first thing that they do is define the press as the enemy to delegitimize dissent. And that's what's going on right now. And that actually worries me, Patrick. It worries me a lot. Anyhow, Patrick Gavin with Talk Media News. Patrick, thank you.
Thank you.
Great talking to you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
From Monterey.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. And welcome back to Thom Hartmann University, the Thom Hartmann Book Club. Today we're reading from Attention Deficit Disorder, A Different Perception. I think it's the only book that I've written that Time Magazine has done a story on. This is, we're in chapter 14. Throughout the book, I explain the whole idea of hunters and farmers, that ADD characteristics are something that would help in a hunting-gathering society. They become a liability in an agricultural society. And so this chapter is titled The Edison Trait, Hunters Who Have Changed the World. Hunters sometimes have difficulty answering the question, what do you do for a living? It's not that there isn't an answer, there are too many answers. Hunters of above average or even genius intelligence often have resumes that are startling in their diversity and accomplishment, even though they may have struggled to simply finish high school. Similarly, the stereotype of the eccentric genius or loony creative type is often applied to hunter inventors, artists, writers, and designers. At many ad agencies, the creative types are allowed or even encouraged to have an eccentric appearance with flowered shirts, long hair, jeans, etc. As the chapter on ADD and creativity pointed out, the ability to think innovatively is intrinsically tied to the ability to fall into an open and therefore distractible state of consciousness, one of the characteristics of ADHD. Conversely, to make use of the inspirations gained from such typical hunter-free association, there must be a compensating burst of focused energy in order to bring these concepts into reality. Learning to channel these bursts is the challenge to every hunter. When hunters fail in life, it is often because their self-image was distorted in an early age when they were labeled as a problem. Their assets are also neglected if they plug into a job or a segment of society which requires farmer rather than hunter skills. But let's look at some successful hunters in history who have demonstrated tremendous powers of transformation, vitality, and dynamic energy, and whose biographies appear to conform to the American Psychiatric Association's DSM criteria of ADHD. While it's impossible for us to reach back to historic figures and ask them to answer the questions which might lead to a medically supportable diagnosis of ADHD, their life stories very often give us those answers in a rather overt fashion. Consider the following. The life of Thomas Alva Edison has been an inspiration to hunter boys for nearly a century. Born in the Midwest before the Civil War, Edison wrote, quote, "I remember I used never to be able to get along at school. I was always at the foot of the class. I used to feel that the teachers did not sympathize with me and that my father thought I was stupid." Edison complained about the distractions of the other children in his school and the fact that learning was abstract and not real. To be able to actually do something, to test a theory or discover a fact through experience, he wrote in his diary, quote, "for one instant was better than learning about something he had never seen for 2 hours," end quote. Believing her son had potential, Edison's mother took over his schooling. Instead of requiring her son to learn a particular curriculum by rote, she instead encouraged him to explore things he found interesting. He soon became a voracious reader and consumed a huge body of knowledge in a wide variety of subjects. Edison left home at the age of 12 and started a long procession of short-lived jobs. The year he was 17, he held 4 different jobs, being fired from each one because of his inattentiveness to the duties or routine of the job. When he was 15, he had a job as a railroad signalman during the night and had to clock in via telegraph every hour. He was fired when his superiors learned that his punctual check-in signal was actually transmitted by a simple invention he'd created from an alarm clock, which would send the Morse code signal on the hour. That invention led to his developing the first automatic telegraph and then the first stock ticker, although he held a dozen more jobs before he received $40,000 for his stock ticker at age 21 and was able to use that money to establish a laboratory where he could devote himself to inventing. Being a classic hunter, Edison usually worked on many projects at the same time. In the year of 1877, for example, we now know that he had more than 40 inventions in process in his laboratory concurrently. He kept his own hours, often working through the night. When he became bored or saturated with one invention, he would quickly hop to another. Edison credited his inability to stick to one task for a long time as being the power of his creative efforts. He wrote, quote, he said, quote, "Look, I start here with the intention of going there," drawing an imaginary line, "in an experiment, say, to increase the speed of the Atlantic cable. But when I've arrived part of the way in my straight line, I meet with a phenomena, and it leads me off in another direction to something totally unexpected," end of quote. Thomas Edison transformed the 20th century with his invention of the electric light bulb, the central power generating station, the phonograph, the flexible celluloid film and movie projector, the alkaline storage battery, and the microphone, merely a few of the more than 1,000 major patents he registered before his death in 1931. Benjamin Franklin flunked out of George Brownell's academy after only 2 years of formal education. It was said that he was slow at doing sums, math, and he utterly failed in arithmetic. His teacher complained that he would never pay attention to his lessons. He spent 2 years as an apprentice candlemaker to his father, but his father's frustrations with young Ben were legion. The boy was always slipping off to explore the town, the salt marshes, and the incoming ships. Having demonstrated his hunter inability to be a scholar in the formal farmer schools of the day, Franklin went on to become one of the most well-educated in terms of practical abilities men in American history. Although he couldn't stick with a single job, Franklin is now celebrated for his accomplishments in dozens of roles. He was a printer, moralist, civic leader, essayist, inventor, scientist, diplomat, publisher, statesman, postmaster, candlemaker, mechanic, and philosopher, among others. His impulsive streak, which was partially responsible for the creation of the United States of America, showed itself early when, at the age of 16, he wrote several articles for the Courant, a Boston newspaper making fun of Boston's authorities and society figures. Anyhow, the book is Attention Deficit Disorder, A Different Perception.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I love it. I mentioned Darrell Issa, and I talked about, holding town hall meetings when your members of Congress refuse to show up. And I can't confirm that this is actually happening, but, I have no reason not to believe it. Lisa Mojica tweets to me, funny you should mention CD 49 Issa, Congressional District 49, Darrell Issa. We are holding an empty chair town hall Tuesday night. So you don't even have to buy a cardboard cutout. You don't even have to find somebody who just kind of looks like him and give them a script that's nothing but Darrell Issa's quotes. Darrell Issa says crazy stuff. You can just put an empty chair up there and ask a question. Tell it what you think. I mean, lots and lots of ways to do it, right? I don't know if the vote has been held yet for Scott Pruitt. It was scheduled for 1 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, yeah, here it is. Scott Pruitt was confirmed. This is amazing. This, how long now before the Cuyahoga River catches on fire again? It's, the stream rule is just the beginning. How many more children are going to get poisoned? How many more adults are going to die from cancers, asthma, entirely preventable conditions? And how much more profit is going to go to Koch Industries and other big polluters? I'm guessing the answer is it's unlimited. It's like it's all anything is possible. Yeah. Betsy in Greenwood, Indiana. Hey, Betsy, thanks for calling Anything Goes Friday. What's up?
Hi. Yes, I wanted to talk about a few weeks ago, maybe a week or so ago, there was a news report that the CIA, FBI, whoever's in charge of security briefings and that, was withholding certain information from Trump because they were afraid he would leak it.
To the Russians specifically, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I read the news stories. Both the FBI, I'm not sure the CIA, but I'm pretty sure the FBI have denied that, and the Trump administration has denied it. So right now that, it's like a leaker said that, and the New York Times reported it, but whether it's true or not, we don't know.
Well, I think Trump is the one who leaked it because that would, two things. That would irate his base would be furious, and it would cover him if anything happens. He can say, well, they didn't tell me. They withheld it.
That's a good, Betty, you're a brilliant conspiracy theorist. I mean, that actually makes sense. Well,
I was going to call last Friday because it was closer to the release of that, but then with that news supposed to be conference yesterday, and what you said about it just was set up.
Yeah.
I agree totally, and
we're being played.
You're right.
We're being
as long
played.
as he can inflame those people who just can't see beyond.
Right, and the media loves it, by the way. It's like, I'm telling you, the suits at CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, and NBC owns MSNBC. The suits, the people who are looking at the quarterly income statements, the people who are making programming decisions and for that matter, content decisions to the extent that they do, and they do in a big way over at Fox. And I'm guessing that they do in a not inconsequential way at CNN and MSNBC. The suits are loving Donald Trump attacking the journalists, even though it diminishes the credibility of the news organizations in this country. And they've had problems with credibility since '87. But, they're loving it because it is, and this is what they wanted. This is why, because it's the Donald Trump reality show version 2.0, the POTUS version. That's what we're watching, or the SCROTUS version, the so-called ruler of the United States. And so here we have, the Donald Trump reality show, which is insanely profitable. And so, of course, they're going to go to his live gig. They're going to do his press conference yesterday, run it wall to wall. They're going to talk about it all day, all night. They're going to go to his thing in the airplane hangar with Boeing today. They will be at his campaign rally tomorrow in Florida. They're doing this because it gets them ratings. They don't care if it's important or not. They don't care if he's lying or not. They don't care if he's whipping up something that's really, really evil and bad for America or not. All they care about is what it does to their bottom line. Does it allow them to say we've got more viewers and therefore we can charge more for advertising, therefore the executives can take larger paychecks and their stock options grow? That's the bottom line. That's what's going on.
It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, there you go. That's Les Moonves, the chairman of CBS. Betty, thank you for the call. Well said. Alan in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Alan, what's on your mind today?
Well, no surprise here, but it seems like we've lost control of our government.
In New Mexico or in the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Okay.
Sure. So a lot of us have sort of gotten together and said, what can we do that can actually make a difference? And the one thing they can't control is our ability to make decisions about what we buy. So a whole bunch of us have said we're going to replace coal with solar, plug-in cars with gasoline, GMOs, corporate media with Thom Hartmann, etc. And so the question is, we're growing really fast. And as you know, with solar, it grew 161% last year, almost doubled.
Right.
That rate will hit the tipping point in just a few years. Can this, if we continue to grow like this, really make a difference in terms of our politics?
I think so. I think it does. And I think it bleeds over into politics. And you're absolutely right, by the way, Alan, about energy. In fact, Saudi Arabia right now is in the process of trying to do an IPO, essentially. They're trying to take Saudi Aramco, which is largely owned by Saudi Arabia, and turn it into a public company. They're trying to sell stock in it to offload it. They will get hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars from selling stock in basically the oil that's under their ground, and use that right now to start setting up massive solar installations all over Saudi Arabia. Because if there's any country in the world that can easily power everything they've got going on with solar power, it's Saudi Arabia. And, they are not idiots. They have figured this out, that fossil fuels are 19th century fuels. This is the 21st century, and they're moving into the 21st century. So, and we're doing this, individually at a local level, with everything from, being able to buy carbon offsets when you fly on an airplane, to being able to get green power. There's do you remember the name of that company, Shano, that is our unsold inventory? That's Adventus, is it? I'll have to. Arcadia Power, that's right. Arcadia Power is a company that is going to be advertising with us. And basically, you buy your electricity through them instead of your local utility. I mean, the money goes to your local utility, but because it's routing through them, it's funneling. Even if your local utility doesn't have wind power, the money's going through a wind power utility, and so it's growing. What would you call it? Growing the portfolio of renewable energy. So there's a lot going on. Alan, well said. Thanks a lot for the call. Dr. Clark in Las Vegas. Hey, Dr. Clark, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I really like your show.
Thank you.
Listening along. Scott Pruitt was confirmed as head of the EPA.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty upset about it because I live in Las Vegas. And according to Elon Musk, a small corner of our state can power the whole country.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here wondering what Dean Hiller's doing, murdering future commerce in Las Vegas by doing this, because I think we use gas at Nevada Power. And Nevada Energy. Mm-hmm. Warren Buffett owns that company now, and he really doesn't need the money.
Yeah, he doesn't.
When they took over the state, I guess funded by the Koch brothers, they took over the state a couple of years ago and took out our net metering. Mm-hmm. So it made solar power more expensive. So Elon Musk is no longer selling Solar City here.
Really?
Because it's not competitive anymore.
Wow.
Well, that's why I didn't get it.
Wow.
It's more expensive to do solar here.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, in Sunshine City.
Las Vegas, Nevada, yes.
That is
Elon Musk is building a huge battery plant up in Reno. Mm-hmm. And he's building giant batteries. So it makes solar power work at night, which is perfect for Las Vegas.
Right.
Because you have to have your AC on at night.
Right.
So I'm confused about how dumb people are. I really am, and I'm so frustrated.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to what happens when a couple of petro-billionaires start buying the entire political infrastructure of the United States. And this is the most underreported story in America.
is that the Koch network is as large as, if not larger than, the Republican Party in terms of their power, in terms of their influence, in terms of their staff, in terms of the money available to them. Or damn close to it anyway. And nobody talks about it, especially, I mean, it used to be that Koch brothers got talked about all the time, but since the Koch industry started advertising on network television, crickets.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Which tells you something about the media. Not that I want to sound like Donald Trump, but it tells you something about the media. We'll be back. And welcome back. Sharon in Jasper, Arkansas. Hey, Sharon, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I was wanting to share something with you. I talked to my friend last night. She's 90 years old, and she went Wednesday to get her blood pressure medicine, Benacart. It had jumped from $140 to $900.
Wow.
Yes.
Time to find a different blood pressure
the
medication.
farmer said, I can give you a generic. And she said, well, how much is that? And he said, $500. Well, she got an increase in January because she has Humana, which Humana will no longer be tie-in for Medicare and stuff. And I knew she was upset because this is a woman can't even take nitro pills. She can't take aspirin because of adverse reactions to it.
Right.
And the other thing I was going to just ask you, what do you think would happen if the journalists got up and walked out on Trump?
I would think that finally the press corps had grown a spine and they decided to stop playing the games. But I think most of those journalists would be immediately fired because the networks are making a fortune off Trump. They're loving it.
No, I just wanted your input on that. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for the call and for the alert. Judy in Pine, Colorado. Hey, Judy, what's up? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Well, I just wanted to let people know that there were 4 Democrats that voted yes on actually it's a House Joint Resolution 38 that allows coal companies to pollute, to dump their toxic materials in the
4
stream.
Democrats in the Senate. I know Joe Manchin was one. He was at the signing ceremony. Who were the others?
Right, McCaskill, Heitkamp, and Donnelly.
Wow.
And I think we should keep track of these folks and get them out. Just because they're Democrats doesn't mean they're going to support what's best for the country or us.
Yeah, I think that, it's up to the people in the states, in Missouri, Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp. Where's she from? She's North Dakota, isn't she?
I don't remember. I'd have to
I'm
get my
not
list
sure where she is, but I think these are all Democrats from red states. And they're believing the old DLC ideology that if you're a Democrat from a red state, you should forget about FDR, forget about LBJ, forget about the Great Society and the New Deal, and just kind of pretend that you're a Republican. And I think that that's a terrible way to be a Democrat in the Senate. But they think it's right, and it certainly gets them lots of campaign contributions from the big corporations who also donate to the Republicans.
Right, so they will never come around to
Correct.
being what's best.
Yeah, it becomes it's almost like an
Get them
addiction.
out and keep track of this.
Yeah.
Heitkamp is from North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota. That's what I thought. So it's sort of like they start out, they need a little help. They injured their backs, and so they start on the prescription painkillers, and then the pain doesn't go away, and they discover that it's a whole lot cheaper to get heroin, and suddenly they're addicted. I mean, in this case, the heroin is the political money that's coming from the big corporations, and as soon as they step into that realm, they're in that downward spiral. And I've been watching Claire McCaskill for a while going in that direction. Judy, thank you for the call. It's a concern, and it's something that the party will deal with. I mean, especially to the extent that you and I are the party, that we're involved. We'll be right back.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity, resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them.
In standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you 24 hours a day.
Every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us.
Raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
Welcome back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. It's Anything Goes Friday. And Carl in Markesan, Wisconsin. Am I saying it right, Carl?
Yes, Mr. Hartman. Actually, I just took a swallow of water while I was contemplating.
Murphy's Law. It's like the waiter comes up and talks to you when your mouth's full of food.
Oh, man. Fortunately, I got it down without any catastrophe.
There you go. So what's up, Carl?
You know, I have, listened to you for, I don't know, close to 10 years, I'm guessing. I have, told my children on the wonderful exposure of, wrongdoing, and you have a lot of passion and a lot of optimism, which is, I know, hard to keep at a, pace that the world seems to be declining. But, I did deep gray criminal investigations for 40-some years, reopening the Robert Kennedy assassination, and I think we probably have some other, I don't think our opinions on the end result of that coincided with the gentleman I worked with, Ted Chirac. And I am so disheartened that pure truth, nothing but the truth, is somehow lost this last 2 years. I find a lot of twisted truth. I've never in my life found a Republican that I like more than a Democrat. I've been pretty disappointed, all along. I got a chance now to see what President Obama was going up against. For a long time I thought, he's a good man, but he's just not strong enough to get what needs to get done. Well, with the obstacles that I'm watching again happening.
Oh, you're in Wisconsin. You're seeing, Koch brothers' money come in and basically steamroller an entire state.
I think they've pretty much steamrolled the entire political system. I think they, sort of look at themselves as heroes, but their actions are so self-serving that, they think, let them eat cake.
It may be. I think that, I don't know what's in their hearts, but you look at their actions, and I'm guessing that, they actually believe in raw, unregulated capitalism. They think of themselves as the pinnacles of that, and to the extent that they're successful in the business world, and they're very successful in the business world, it validates their worldview. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm reluctant to completely demonize anybody. I think pretty much everybody has to be able to look themselves in the mirror in the morning. So we all have our rationalizations and whatnot. But Carl, you think this is an opportunity for us all to come together?
I honestly, that was the point I'm making. What we really have to do is grab onto the cold, hard truth in each, whether it be party, whether it's religion, whatever it is. The Muslim religion, I think, is as honorable as any religion on earth in theory.
Mm-hmm.
Just twisted. I think Muhammad's one of my heroes. I was raised a Catholic, but I studied to be a priest. That wasn't something I could, grasp that any particular group had the knowledge on.
Well, all of the world's great
life.
Yeah, all the world's great religions teach peace as their core principle, peace and love as their core principle. It's when they get twisted, whether it's, the Christians who are out assassinating abortion doctors and calling themselves warriors for God. I mean, literally, they call themselves God's army. Or whether it's, ISIL killing people because they think that this is what Allah or God wants. It's all a perversion of our best instincts, which is what, in my opinion, religion should lead us to.
And in your expression of sort of a neutral look at any particular faith, as that's the way I look at it. Spiritual, yes. I'm not a joiner, and I find religions in general to be self-serving. As soon as you join something, the most valuable thing you have is your independent thought.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you join it, you're giving something up that only you have.
Yeah. Well, if you not only join and buy in 100% top to bottom, I think it's possible. For example, I consider myself a Christian, but I'm very skeptical that Jesus was born of a virgin. Now, there's a lot of people who would say, okay, if you say that out loud, you're not a Christian. And I would say, no, if you don't believe in helping the less fortunate, if you're Paul Ryan, you're not a Christian. So, we have differences of opinion. Carl, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
In fact, it boggles my mind that anybody in the Republican Party can call themselves, Christian or religious or whatever, because it so contradicts the teachings of Jesus. The Philippine war on drugs. Rodrigo Duterte launched a Filipino version of Richard Nixon's war on drugs. Now, you'll recall Richard Nixon's war on drugs, John Ehrlichman told us, the reason for it was that they wanted to bust up the hippies and they wanted to bust up the civil rights movement, essentially. And so they made heroin and pot super illegal. And, whether they planted it on people or people were using it, they just went after that. Well, this war on drugs in the Philippines is now 7 weeks old. This is as of the 23rd, 3 days ago. 7 weeks old. 1,900 people have died. 1,900 people have died. Over 100,000 Mexicans have died just on our border in the Mexican war on drugs. Millions of Americans have had their lives ruined by the war on drugs in this country since Richard Nixon launched it in the late 1960s, early 1970s. Millions of people. And I would say probably between tens and hundreds of thousands of people have died as a result of the war on drugs. This is crazy. Portugal had the third highest drug addiction rate in Europe. Now that includes, Europe these days now includes a number of very, very, the former Soviet states that are very, very poor countries where they have, that are closer, that are farther south and east and closer to the principal source of heroin these days, and opium, which is Afghanistan. And so there's, a couple of countries that had higher drug addiction rates, but among the developed countries of Europe, the so-called Western European nations, Western and Northern European nations, Portugal was number one in terms of drug addiction, and particularly heroin, and new infections of HIV and Hep C, which come along with, sharing needles. So Portugal decriminalized all drugs. They did the exact opposite of what the Philippines did 8 weeks ago, when their new president came in. They did the exact opposite. They decriminalized all drugs. And this was 14 years ago, in 2002. And now they have one of, if not the lowest drug addiction rates in all of Western Europe, arguably probably all of Europe. And the rates of new HIV and Hep C infections have just collapsed. And organized crime in Portugal, at least that part of organized crime that was involved in the drug trade, it broke their back.
They're destroyed. They're gone. Toast. We're watching in real time this terrible mistake in the Philippines. 1,900 people killed in the first 7 weeks in the so-called war on drugs. And whereas in Portugal, the Portuguese government, first of all, everybody in Portugal has free health care. So they stopped treating drug addiction as a crime, started treating it as a medical issue. And drug addicts are now they can get their drugs, and they can get clean syringes if they're using injectable drugs. And we're talking all drugs, LSD, cocaine, heroin, you name it. But the big ones, of course, are heroin and pot. But they decriminalized everything and had this really, really good result. Whereas here in the United States, there was just a story, I think it was Indiana, might have been Ohio, somewhere in the Midwest, where something like 18 people had died over the course of a day or two because a new batch of heroin arrived and it had been cut with fentanyl or one of these other pharmaceutical drugs that are actually far more potent than heroin. Yes, heroin is not the most potent or addictive opioid drug. There are a number of prescription drugs that are more powerful than heroin. And, in many parts of the world, heroin is used I believe, as a pharmaceutical. It's dihydromorphine, I think is the chemical name for it. And it's just, heroin is just morphine that has had, a slight change to its molecular structure that makes it a little bit more potent than morphine, or arguably a lot more potent than morphine. But this is, it's simple lessons for us. How to figure this stuff out. It's just simple lessons. But there's so much money to be made here in the United States. Oh, and these people who are dying in the United States because they're getting heroin that's laced with, that's been cut with pharmaceuticals. That's because the heroin is illegal, right? You're not going to end heroin addiction by outlawing it, particularly when you consider that it is, by and large, a medical problem. Addiction is a medical problem. Whether it's addiction to caffeine, to nicotine, to heroin, you name it, alcohol. These are medical problems that should be treated as medical problems.
Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Wow, 6 inches of rain hitting Los Angeles with wind gusts to 70 miles an hour. That's amazing. We had 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts here in D.C. night before last. It was a absolutely wild night to be sleeping on a boat. I'll tell you, flying around. It was incredible. I actually really love that. I love being rocked to sleep. Mark in San Francisco. Hey, Mark, you wanted to talk about ALEC?
I do, Tom. I think it'd be good strategy to start demonstrating at ALEC and the Heritage Foundation and really make a scene that these are the people that are writing legislation for the lapdog Republican Party, that actually the party isn't doing any of this. It's coming from these think tanks, and people need to be really aware of that.
I agree. And, pointing it out, it's like the power behind the throne that will not be mentioned in the corporate media, by the way. You're absolutely right. Mark, thank you for the call. John in LaGrange, Illinois. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Great.
I've been listening to you for a long time, but this is the first time I'm actually calling.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on a speakerphone, John. Is that because you're listening on our app?
I was listening to you on your app, but I switched over to my Polycom, so I don't really have a way to switch over to a phone. Is this okay? Or?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Go for
cool.
it.
Thank you. So I'm originally from Michigan as well. And lately, I noticed that, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I think you're a brilliant guy, and I highly value your opinions. So, anytime you talk, you're amazing.
Okay, enough buttering up, John. What's the question?
Thanks. So here's my theory. It looks like recently in Michigan, the GOP is putting up like Ted Nugent and Kid Rock. And it seems like we're kind of switching into this celebrity politics type strategy. And like I'm kind of concerned because I think it's actually going to work. I think if they put up somebody in a blue friendly state, such as like a Ted Nugent or a Kid Rock, they're actually going to win. So why can't Democrats do the same thing in red friendly states and throw up more of the celebrities as well and kind of go more on the offense with that strategy?
Well, Democrats have been doing that for a long time. I mean, Hollywood is fairly blue, and just look at the Emmys that recently, and or the Oscars rather, whichever it was. Yeah. I don't know. I don't watch this. But I'm a member of the union. I get to vote for it. But in any case, you're right, John. It's an effective strategy, and it's an effective strategy that's used on both sides. And I don't have an instant way to or an easy way to counter it other than to show up and protest. I mean, Ted Nugent is just despicable, given the things he said about women, the things he said about guns, the things he said about President Obama. I don't know Kid Rock, from Adam, and I don't personally know Ted Nugent, but yeah. John, thanks for the call. Patricia in Phoenix. Hey, Patricia, what's up?
Yes, Tom. I wanted to talk about the Advantage plans that you were talking about earlier, but before I do that, I'd just like to preface by saying that I think it's just unconscionable, as the previous caller said, that the pharmaceutical companies are making such an immense profit in raising prices the way they do, along with the health insurance companies and the CEOs that are making billions of dollars. I think it's terrible. But back to the Advantage plan, I don't know if it's different state by state, but I'm 76 years old. I've been on an Advantage plan since I went on Medicare at 65. Mm-hmm. Now, I've had nothing but good things to say. First off, I don't pay any extra premium.
Right. No, the government pays the extra premium to your health insurance company.
Yeah, they take the money from the Social Security.
Right.
But my husband passed away last year, and his bills were almost $1 million. Whoa. And I've paid $1,580 so far. And as far as I can tell, that's all I'll have to pay. And this is all on the Advantage plan.
Well, you must have a reasonably good plan, but the way that Advantage works is all that extra money is not coming out of the pocket of the insurance company. It's coming out of the federal government. It's coming out of Medicare. It's just that it's being routed through your insurance company to the providers. And so they're actually, the problem, looking at this systemically, the problem with Medicare Advantage is that it's more expensive than Medicare because there's that 20% profit that goes to the insurance company. It's not hurting you. You're not seeing that. What it's doing, though, is it's taking money out of the Medicare system that could be used for everybody else and giving it to United Healthcare or there's a couple of other companies that participate, but United is the biggest. And then, we get these stories like I shared the AP story with you earlier where they're gaming the system. They're saying to the federal government, give us even more money, pretending that their members are sicker than they actually are, so they qualify for even larger subsidies.
Oh, I think that's terrible, and I don't think we need the insurance companies to start with.
No, we don't.
If we went to a universal single-payer health care plan, as they have in other countries, originally I'm British, so I still have family over there and know what kind of health care coverage they get, but now they're starting to bit by bit privatize their health care system, and from what I understand, United Healthcare is over there now trying to gain a footing.
That's true.
And I know. And
that's true, and it's the new conservative government. They've had a couple of conservative governments there, and conservative no longer means conservative. It means pro-corporate or corporatist.
Exactly. So, yes, unfortunately, it worked out well for me, but unfortunately, as you say, it's taking away from Medicare. And if we didn't have these companies, when Aetna can offer $47 billion to buy another company, there's something wrong somewhere. That's just terrible.
Well, and that $47 billion came from saying to people like you, no, we're not going to pay your bills.
Exactly.
Or from saying to the federal government through their elected, through the elected officials that they own, we want extra money. We want more money taken out of the Medicare fund and going into our pocket. And that's how Stephen J. Hemsley gets his billion-dollar, paydays too. So yeah, Patricia, thank you for the call. It's an important point, and thanks for listening to 1480 in Phoenix there. Rose in Mountain Center, California, listening on KBCS. Hey, Rose, what's up?
Hello, how are you?
Just great. How are you?
Good.
Happy
good.
Friday.
Waiting around for the rain. So I just wanted to call and bring up an article that I'd found. I remember listening to your show a few months ago, maybe a year ago, about like the TSA and how it was being outsourced.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to check out who's one of the number one funders of outsourcing the TSA, and it was J. Rowe Price, and which was
the investment firm.
Yes,
oh, that's interesting.
Investment firm, and it was interesting. That's who my 401k was with at this aerospace place that I was like working at, and it's interesting how they kind of automatically sign you up for 401ks. And when I started to really research, I realized I didn't want to be part of the 401k and kind of what 401ks fund. And then I came across this one article from Heron, HERON.com or .org. And it says, thinking on who owns privatized prisons, most likely you. And it points out how privatized prisons are really funded by 401ks. And I don't know if you're aware of that or if your listeners are, but it's a very interesting thing to look into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And let's use the word profitized instead of privatized, because that's really what it is. It's taking a public good prison and turning it into a profit center. So they're profitizing these things.
Yes, pure profitized prisons, but we don't realize that the profits we're all benefiting from them. If you have a 401k, most likely you are benefiting from the profitized prison.
Right, which is kind of a sick and twisted thing, isn't it?
It is. It's sad to see probably a lot of people who are paying into their 401ks have maybe children in jail. And they don't realize that the fact that their children are in jail are allowing them to retire for future.
Yeah, and they're helping to fund it. Yeah, good point, Rose. Excellent point. And, whenever they profitize anything, and Rose, thank you for the call. Anytime they profitize anything, whether it's the British privatizing parts of the National Health Service, whether it's Tom Price and Paul Ryan trying to profitize Medicare and Medicaid, whether it's Pete Peterson trying to profitize Social Security, all they're doing is trying to get, put their hand deeper in your pocket.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And into the pocket of we the people, into the pocket of the public good. It helps the billionaires, it doesn't help us. And welcome back. Scott in Phoenix, Arizona, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's up?
I have quite a bit, but I told the gentleman I would just do the one.
One topic, please. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Let's see. I called in when it was about solar. That was a minute ago. I had to say that I listened to everybody else, and I have to say that the comments on the pharmaceuticals, it really scares me with the pharmaceuticals and the mental illness laws that are coming out, and the organizations with the mental health laws, because it's so shifty with the legal wordings, where they support mental health, but they don't tell you how.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the combination of the new nanotechnologies coming out, that's a dangerous, scary place right there. But I'll stick to the solar, where it's actually very cheap to make. The ingredients that you need to make the solar panel is all around us.
Yep.
In your grocery store.
Yep. Silicate. It's sand.
And yeah, all of it.
They need some rare earths. There are some compounds that are not easily available, but the bottom line is that the cost of solar energy has dropped by 95% over the last 3 decades.
Yeah, they're just getting ready to release it into the market because they've set themselves up first, is what I believe. And they label all of these different materials under separate product names, under different labels, is something other than what it is called in nature. And I'm afraid to tell people about it on a show like this because I'm sincerely afraid that it would cause the sources of those materials and the ingredients to just suddenly be illegal. And the majority would not know the wiser. They would suddenly claim it's, a poison, or people are doing, using it as a drug or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott, these are real issues, and thank you for the call, by the way. Thank you very much for the call. These are real issues that we need to pay attention to. That said, I'm not so concerned about, people knowing the names of molybdenum that goes into or chromium that goes into a solar cell or whatever. But with regard to the cost of prescription drugs, the thing that we have to remember is that the only reason that the prescription drug companies can screw us on the prices of the drugs is because our legislators voted to make it illegal for us to buy drugs from a pharmacy in Canada or Mexico. It's against the law to import drugs from outside the country. So companies can't compete with each other. And so what you have is companies in the United States basically setting up monopolies. And then they've extended the patent laws. And this is all basically government welfare for pharmaceutical companies, which is why, owning a pharmaceutical company is a license to print money. They're making an absolute friggin' fortune. And they're doing it by manipulating government. And nobody will talk about that in the corporate media, again, because, they're all the interlocking boards of directors and, big corporations love big corporations and all that sort of thing. So we need to change this at the level of policy, not just the level of, attacking the company and, Heather Bresch is a terrible person and that kind of nonsense. But instead, we need to change the laws that make things like what Heather Bresch did with EpiPen, just impractical, not even illegal, just impractical. You can import them from Canada where they're, half the price. Why not? Hey, thanks so much to our show director, Louise Hartman, to my executive producer, Sean Taylor, to our video director, Chris Mendelis, to radio TV producer, Troy Miller, to our phone screener, Nate Atwell, to our writer-researchers, Nate Sweet, to our webmasters, Nigel Peacock and Jamie Holly, to our business manager, Ron Hartenbaum, to everyone at our syndicators, Digital Media, Pacifica Radio, Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Cable Radio Network, Free Speech TV on Dish Network, DirecTV, and all the cable providers who carry our show, now including Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We're in every home in Manhattan, and all the others around the country. To all the great folks at Free Speech TV and RTTV who work on the big picture, to the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn, to Netroots Radio, to our newsletter editor, Sue Nethercutt, to the folks in our chat room, to Ellen Ratner, Victoria Jones, Bob Ney, and everyone at Talk Media News, to Jay Goodman-Tamboli for tech support, to our affiliates, our sponsors, and to you for supporting our program. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, I want to chime in on the healthcare thing. Your examples of Medicare Advantage and, of course, Medicare Part D are key. The problem with healthcare is not there's a lack of free market insurance options, which the Republicans want to convince you of. As long as costs keep skyrocketing, premiums are not going to go down. But I would suggest that the insurance companies are but one of many moving parts in the healthcare system, and they actually enjoy it. The costs are skyrocketing because, as you pointed out, if insurance plans, if costs were cut to the degree that you could buy an insurance plan that really truly was affordable to the average person, the insurance companies wouldn't make any money. But if they have to route everything through the federal government because everything needs some kind of a subsidy, such as in Medicare Part D or Medicare Advantage, that's where they really make their killing.
Right.
Because it really doesn't pass through your fingers or my fingers.
Right, and this is why United Healthcare is so wealthy. It's why Stephen J. Hemsley has all these homes all over the world. It's why AARP has a headquarters here in Washington, D.C. that looks like something out of Louis XIV.
Right. So if I could suggest here, the thing about a single-payer system, it has what's in a market called the advantage of monopsony, M-O-N-O-P-S-O-N-Y, which means one buyer, many sellers. When there's one buyer, the buyer gets to dictate the terms and leaves it to the sellers to have to cut their costs in order to make a profit. In that way, when we as a collective, we the people, get to be the the consumer, we get to tell them, you're going to have to cut costs or we're not buying it.
Mm-hmm. So
and that's what we need. That's why a single-payer system does work,
right,
as opposed to what we have now. And it would be an improvement on Obamacare, of course, too.
Right,
but
absolutely.
As long as we don't cut costs, if costs don't get cut, and at this present time, as you know, our fee-for-service billing system, there is no incentive for providers to cut costs. And as we've just outlined, the insurance companies love it when costs go up because it has to be routed through some government subsidy, and that's where they make their money through their lobbying.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, very, very well said. As always, it's always great to hear from you, my friend. Thank you for the call. Jeremy in Bloomington, Indiana. Hey, Jeremy, what's on your mind today?
Yes, this is somewhat in response to the caller called in earlier about Kid Rock on the GOP side, as well as a general call to action. I think we need more scientists in government. We need more scientists in the Senate, in the House, and in scientists for president would be great. And I even, for example, I saw on Bill Maher a while back ago Neil deGrasse Tyson saying there's not enough scientists in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And I, for one, would like to see him run. And I feel like we need to find scientists that we, trust.
Well, when Scott Pruitt takes over the EPA today, there may be a whole lot of scientists out of work. So maybe they'll start, thinking about running for public office. I think your point is really well taken, Jeremy, and I completely agree with it. And we need to be funding science. It's one of those investments that returns multiples, and whether it's particularly when it's funded by government. And we're just to watch these Republicans who are so anti-science, saying the world is 6,000 years old. There's no such thing as global warming. Men should control the decisions women make. Blah 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 blah. It's a freak show. It's a horror. Jeremy, thanks for the call. Joy in Thompsonville, Illinois. Hey, Joy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. So glad to talk to you. My husband and I were enthusiastic supporters of Bernie Sanders, and so it was like there was a death in the family when he didn't get out of the primary. And knowing what happened in the primary through the same progressive and other sources, the cheating of our candidate, he lost because he was cheated by Donna Brazile and Debbie.
Yeah, Joy, let's not relitigate the primary, okay? It's over.
Okay, I don't want to relitigate, but I think we cannot continue from where we are until the DNC owns this and says that, yes, we did cheat it. And I haven't.
Oh, they have. Donna Brazile and Debbie Wasserman Schultz are both
she
out.
Had to resign, and then Hillary gave her a new position if Hillary had won.
No, that was an honorary thing. She did not give her a new job. I saw all the outrage about that. It was just.
The Democrats have only given Bernie a token position in the DNC, and how can we start anew with a party that we know was so dishonest in a primary? How can we trust that party again?
Get inside it and take it over.
Well, but that's the party that is also beholden to corporations and all
the more reason to get inside it and take it over, Joy.
Now, huh?
All the more reason to get inside it and take it over. There are a lot of Democrats in the House and Senate. We had one of them on this program yesterday who are not out there begging corporations for money. And
really?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the entire House Progressive Caucus. Go through opensecrets.org and look at who's funding them. It's mostly small donations or labor unions. And what you will find, and occasionally trial lawyers, and what you will find, who are fighting for the little guy. So there's a simpatico there, and what you'll find is that if you get inside your Democratic Party and really work on it, you can make things happen. Joy, I got to move along. We've still got a lot of callers, and I've only got 2 minutes left. Thank you for the call, though. Chris in Oakland, California. Chris, what's up?
Tom, I know a lot of your callers call up and heap praise on you, and as you said a little while ago, butter you up. But I also want to do a little bit of the same, and I want to thank you so much for the insight you provide and
thank you, Chris.
The efforts you put forward trying to educate us, and in that theme, I want to share some insight from another very, very sage individual I once had the privilege of meeting. It's a quote from from Pete Seeger.
Okay, you got 40 seconds. Go for it.
Pete once said that education is what you get when you read the fine print, and experience is what you get when you don't. And
that's great.
And I'd just like people to think about that. And,
Pete Seeger also wrote a song about Donald Trump's daddy, about Fred Trump, and how he was discriminating against African Americans in his housing projects in Brooklyn, and which is pretty amazing. I mean, it's Pete Seeger's been at the nexus of a whole lot of things, you know, and even This Land Is Your Land was a protest song. Chris, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to SiriusXM. And boy, what a week. What a week. And when you're watching, if you happen to watch Donald Trump's campaign event this weekend or see any coverage of it, keep in mind, you know, the possibility that his press conference, everything he's doing right now is all very well organized by Steve Bannon to make the press into the evil ones, to bring, you know, so that Donald Trump can become the superhero. And once you understand that frame, a lot of things start falling into place. So understand the frame first, and then you can understand the information inside the frame. Thanks so much for being with us this week. We'll be back on Monday. Have a wonderful, blessed, happy weekend, and, you know, always look on the bright side of life. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy requires you. It's not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. See you Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com.